I've gotten myself to a point where perfect is not in my vocabulary for this
Mm.
stuff. I don't care about perfect. It's never going to be perfect. I am always going to find some flaw that I could continue to tweak. I'm always going to find something that I wish I did a little bit differently. Oh, I don't like that lyric. Oh, I wish I'd sung that note differently. Oh, the kick is too loud. Oh, this mix is too dull. Whatever. Is it the best that I can do with the skill set, the experience, and the knowledge that I have right now? I feel more strongly if you're like, the Mac versus PC debate, but like if you're an iPhone person, cool. If you're an Android person, cool. At the end of the day, we as a society have devolved to using these things that were supposed to be designed to call people. We've now just, basically adapted to make them an extension of our extremities, right? So we just, walk around with these stupid things in our hands, just tapping a screen all day, with the occasional swipe, I guess. But
Wait till it becomes one with us, with things like the Neuralink and who knows what else is coming,
Yeah, it's crazy.
Pretty much the cell phone inside of pretty much we're just working on getting the cell phone inside of us, essentially.
I know.
Into our brains. It seems kind of scary. Like, I'm not the biggest fan of that.
No, me either. I'm terrified of it. I am certifiably paranoid about any of that stuff. Like, I'm a huge proponent of technology, but you can take it too far. Like, people are already being microchipped. That's crazy.
They are. Like, there's a show I like. It's probably one of the podcasts that maybe started me on the path to, I would like to think, changing my life for the better. I can't remember the guy who was on there. Maybe it was Peter Diamandis or somebody like that. But he just had the basic one. I think it's like NSID or one of these the things that like the phone have where you can just place it on something to scan. But it would it was pretty much on, like, let's say under his wrist. And if you were to scan it with like your phone or whatever scanning device, it pretty much acted as his technology version of me giving you my card with my number and picture or whatever,
That's insane.
So yeah, it would tell you his name and pretty much just give you his contact, email, phone number, and etc. Something basic.
Wow.
So yeah.
Wow. That's where we're going as a society. Like, I mean, on the one hand, if you think about it, the positives are, okay, what happens if somebody is, having a heart attack or having a stroke or having some sort of medical crisis where they are unable to identify themselves or speak for themselves, like, sure, having something that you can scan that brings up that, is very, very helpful. But I mean, this is some like Brave New World 1984 shit.
It's coming, man. It's coming.
Is this better, by the way?
Yeah. I mean, it was
Okay,
working
cool.
fine, but then as you were explaining like a point there, it just cut for like a second or two, and I was like, good it happened now, that way, because I actually forgot about it, because that's like a one-time thing you have to do, really, like, and because I've used it so long, every now and then I'll forget, and then we'll be into it, and then like, oh, my bad. Like, can you like please stop talking so we can like fix your site?
Yeah, it's like, I know you were in the middle of like a really heated, passionate point, but can you just STFU for a sec so that we can troubleshoot it?
Because not only that, like, no one's hearing it. I'm not hearing it, so it's just talking to yourself.
I mean, like, I feel like that makes up a good chunk of my day. It's just like randomly patting around talking to myself and then catching myself talking to myself and being like, why am I talking to myself right now?
That's important, though. I feel like sometimes I talk aloud to myself, but I feel like the communication with oneself is like super important. So as silly as
Yeah.
we might be, because I think we have this persona like, oh, that makes you crazy. But I mean, it still might make us crazy. But I mean, like, I feel like it's still important. You know, like it's important to like it's how we learn ourselves, control ourselves, become better. You know,
Yeah,
understand
exactly.
ourselves. Yeah. So yeah.
Exactly. By the way, how's your day been? How the heck are you?
I think overall, overall I'm fine because I'm here now. So yeah, that's where we go. But
Good.
I think I lost a bit of my confidence. So hopefully I'm gonna be fine. Just because I feel like I fell off. I don't drink or nothing, but I was gonna say the wagon, but I like just like junk food wagon. So I feel like that. So I think that kind of dude, I've been thrown off my routine the last day. So I do a lot of like yoga and meditation and stuff like that. And I haven't
Nice.
gotten to do it yesterday and not yet today. So, but I always tell myself I train every day, so I don't have to train every day. So it's
Yeah.
no big. I'll get back on to it probably tomorrow because today's my sister's birthday, so I'm gonna do that after.
Oh,
So
no way. That's
yeah,
awesome. Happy birthday to your sister.
yeah. Shout out Suzanne.
Happy birthday, Suzanne. That's so, yeah, it's so funny. The whole wagon thing, getting on, jumping off, it's interesting, right? Junk food, working out, it all kind of falls under the same sort of umbrella as, drinking or smoking or, participating in whatever other recreational semi-destructive habits, we might have, right? It's like at the end of the day, if you get on a wagon and that wagon never stops moving and you never get off, I think eventually you're going to find yourself smack in the middle of the ocean someplace,
Mm.
right? Like you kind of have to stop. It's like, did you ever play Oregon Trail when you were younger?
Oh my gosh, was that like that kind of DOS looking type game, right? Like,
Yes.
I just remember that being in the library, like back in the day, when we didn't have computers, and internet was a brand new thing, and we would like go to the library and like 30-minute chunks we would take it, and that would be a game
Yep.
that people would play.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, they had specific points in the game where, like, you'd come to a river, and if you were unlucky enough, you were fording that river, and you or two, someone might have died of dysentery or something like that.
Mm,
That was, but I mean, all jokes aside, I mean, it's one of those things where, you know, it, especially with how much we as adults and we as millennials especially have to manage on the day to day. They say, well, everybody has the same 24 hours. You have the same 24 hours as Beyonce. Great. But, sometimes people get stressed out. Sometimes people get tired. Sometimes people just even something, that isn't necessarily good for you. And it's like, what are you going to do? Or, I know that I said I'd do yoga today, but I'm really tired. I'll do it tomorrow. Like you got to have some of those moments where it's like, all right, the pattern breaks, the structure breaks, the routine takes a pause to really appreciate how much work it takes to maintain that regimen, And so whether it's drinking or eating healthy or exercising and stuff, it's balance. It's kind of perspective too. So
it's
you
it's
know,
funny because I've been kind of living. It's something I just kind of started. Like I've always known the idea, but maybe like last month, maybe some point December-ish, maybe even November, but it's still recent in my life. I've been kind of trying to live my days like kind of by a list, you know?
mm,
And I have been getting I've probably been maybe the most optimized that I've been or efficient is the word maybe.
mm,
Um and I needed that because like it's an artist problem for many of us where we are stretched like we don't just pick one, right? Like just can't just be music. It has to be this and that too and that too and that too, and then you try and make all of them successful, but it's like really hard. So I'm like, as I slowly still try to narrow it down, um, yeah, the list has been helping. That way I could like hit up many different things I do want to achieve, or at least little by little. That way it adds over time. But yeah, every now and then, days happen where I can't do it all, and just have
yeah.
to not be as angry as that one day as much as you just get try to get back on it the next, and that's all that really matters.
Yeah, but it's so funny because like you can distill it down to it being as simple as that, right? It's like here's the big picture, here's my why, and here's my what. Here's what I'm working toward, and here's why this is important to me. At the end of the day, that big picture, you need small steps in order to get there most of
Yeah.
the time. And sometimes you misstep, or sometimes you get distracted and you go a different path, or you go do something else, or you just not feeling it for a day. It's so easy to get really upset at yourself and really upset with, just everything because, I didn't get anything, near where I wanted to get done today. So I must be a failure. And it's like, great, that's productive.
Yeah, yeah, it's fun. I've worked on myself a lot like recently to like even when those happens, like I don't think I'd like to think I'm not capable of doing that to myself anymore. Like I still might be like, man, what happened? But
Mm,
I don't think I would bad talk myself anymore, or bad mouth myself anymore. Um,
that's good.
just
That's
from the
a
things
really
I've
good
gotten into.
accomplishment.
Yeah, like it's still things I'm trying to figure out, and there's still things I'm like, man, why do I keep doing that, or blah blah blah. But it's less anger, there's less
Mm,
or if any, like I like that's almost not a thing no more. There's no like sad, there's no it's more like, all right, how do I figure this out and just trying to work on it. But
mm,
yeah, that came it was weird. It was almost like a it just came. I'd like to credit it to those things I mentioned before, yoga, meditation, but from just doing it enough that one day it just kind of clicked. Like it didn't
yeah.
happen in one day, and maybe it didn't even happen in months because I've been doing some of this stuff for a while. But like I feel like some point last year, like it just started clicking, and I was like, okay, maybe this is what people be talking about, that this stuff helps. It just takes a while.
It really does. It's, I mean, there's that the sort of theory that it takes 21 days thereabouts to form a habit, right? And
Yeah,
so like you do something, and maybe for the first like for the first day, like few days, it kind of just feels like you're going through the motions of like, all right, this is what I'm supposed to do. I don't feel any different, whatever, And then all of a sudden you start noticing, because I actually did this with sugar, believe it or not. Um, so I had I've always been a pretty small human my entire life. I think I had one point when I was in fifth grade where I just like shot up,
the growth
and I
spurt.
was taller. Yeah, taller than like everybody, and that lasted maybe like cool like 8 months or something like that. And then all of a sudden, it was just like by the time I think I got to ninth grade, eighth grade, ninth grade, I was the smallest, pretty much the smallest in my grade. And in those couple of years in between, it was just like, everyone was gradually catching up to me and stuff. Um, but I've always been a relatively small person. And yet at the same time, I went through a bit of a period after I graduated college where I started to notice that I was putting on weight, and I wasn't really understanding why, and I was starting to feel really sluggish and really miserable, and um so I started to look at, well, wait a second, I'm working 16-hour days and I'm eating like twice a day. How could I possibly be putting on weight? Like, what the heck am I eating? And I started to notice after, looking at my average intake on a week. And this is going to probably gross you out. And for anybody that hears this, don't do this. Um, I was eating something like 800 calories worth of sugar a day, because what I would do was on my break, I would go to Whole Foods. So I would just walk to Whole Foods. It was like a 5-minute walk. And I would get this big ass slice of coffee cake and like a whole bag of cherries, like a pound and a half, 2 pounds of cherries, right? And that was my like breakfast, lunch, and like half dinner. And then when I got home, I was also just like eating rather unhealthily and stuff. I ate a lot of pasta. I ate a lot of pizza and stuff like that. So I really was just eating like poorly.
I'm still on team pizza. I said a lot.
You can be on team pizza. In fact, I might have had pizza for dinner last night.
Some things never die, no matter how.
No, they really don't. But but one thing that I'll say is, so I made a choice and I said to myself, okay, I don't know if this is going to work, but I do know that I feel miserable. I look miserable. I'm probably miserable to be around. So, and the only thing that I really can notice is that, because I was exercising, I was running and I was doing yoga and stuff. The only thing I can notice is my diet sucks. So I made a pledge. Okay, I'm not going to have any added sugar tomorrow. Anything that I eat, it can't have any added sugar. I can have fruit. I can have, anything else so long as it doesn't have added sugar. So I did. And you think, okay, cool, whatever, that was easy. Big effing deal, right? Like I went one day without eating sugar. Cool, let me do it again tomorrow. Let me see how that works out. All right, cool. Made it a second day. All right, cool. I still don't, my skin doesn't look any different. My body doesn't look any different. I don't necessarily feel any different, but let me go ahead and do a third day just in case. And 3 days turned to 7 and 7 turned to 14. And by 2 weeks in, first of all, I had to grapple with going to the grocery store and finding foods in there that didn't have added sugar. Hell hath no fury like going to the grocery store and trying to find foods that do not have any sugar, corn syrup, high fructose corn syrup, any of the other, code words for added sugar and stuff like that. So I spent 2 hours. I was in the grocery store for 2 hours that first, within that first week or two. It got easier after that. So long story short, after 2 weeks, I said, all right, I can do this. It's not necessarily the easiest thing, but why don't I just make it a month? Can I go a full month without, eating any added sugar? And sure enough, I could. And I did. And I didn't really notice anything in that first month that was, monumental. But I did start to notice that I craved it less. And so this was, by the way, like end of August and September, something like that. So I said, but after 1 month, I was like, you know what? Fine. I'm going to go to Christmas. I'm going to make it, to Christmas without eating any added sugar. And this was, by the way, a point in my life where I really didn't drink much either. So I had that going for me. By 3 months, 4 months in, I had lost, I want to say something along the lines of 10 to 15 pounds, which is, I'm 5'2" for reference, so that's a lot for a small human, but not a lot in that span of time. My skin had cleared up, and as a sufferer of very chronic PMS and I was very emotional. I had, these massive mood swings, and I had really, I know this is too much information, but I had really painful periods and stuff. None of that was going on anymore. And so it's interesting just looking back on that. And this was about 8.5 years ago, 9.5 years ago, something like that, that I did this. And ever since then, I did break Christmas Eve because my Aunt Anne makes the most amazing chocolate eclairs. So I did break. But it was weird. By that point, I had gone 4 months without added sugar, and I was planning on having 2, and I only ate 1, and that was enough. And from there, I never really craved sugar anymore.
I mean, actually, on that day, did it still taste like you remember it or not?
Oh yeah, I mean, it was wonderful, and they're amazing, but I was completely fine with just having 1. And from there, then I felt like, okay, you know what? I proved to myself that I can do this. I proved to myself that there is an actual benefit. I felt much better. I had more energy. Everything just felt better. But I also knew, like, okay, it's not really practical in a lot of ways to just have no added sugar. So I was able to kind of use that
Control
as like
it. Yeah.
yeah. So it is one of those things where, like, with anything, with, habits and, any kind of habits, personal habits, creative habits, anything like that, you start with, a day. Let me do, maybe, like you said earlier, I kind of have like a list of things to do. Let me start with this list for this day. Let me see if I can get through everything and whether, that was manageable, or let me see if I can go one day without adding, eating added sugar or whatever. And let me see if it's manageable. And then you just sort of build from there and, long ass tangent, but,
No, it's good. That's good stuff. I think that day by day is a super important approach in the beginning, to getting into this. I noticed what's happening to me, and this maybe shows you maybe how weak I was, or maybe have been, or maybe still am in some areas. But I feel like for a lot of the things, like the foods I like for me is like kettle chips, or like the Mexican Cokes, or the Cheez-Its, those things,
oh man,
I know.
I used to love Cheez-Its.
But like what's happening to me, like and I bought a box last night, so I have it still now. But they don't. That's why I asked if it tasted good on this Christmas Eve when you had it, because they don't have that same thing to me. But I think I might have just had it so much in like those periods where I was heavy into it that the thing stops having that effect. Like I would need so much for it to think that I can't even eat that much, so like they're almost becoming easier for me to quit now, just because like, oh, like this doesn't work, like I need something else now, like this doesn't do the effect. Maybe I was using them as an escape at some point in my life, but like like they're becoming like that now for me, I've noticed, which is so.
Do you notice too, like, I don't know if you've hit this point, but like there's a point where your body does not metabolize certain foods as well as it used to. And sometimes it's just one of those things, like I'll eat pizza every now and then, and, because why not? Pizza is wonderful. Although
that's the one food that hasn't died for me. I don't know what's in that stuff. I don't know why. Everything else, I'm like, it's not that good. Like, but that, I'm like, it still works, it still works.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where like, I'll eat pizza here and there, but it is one of those things where as you get older, and it's so funny because I think like we think about like, I don't know, as I've gotten older, my concept of old has drastically shifted. I used to think of like 30 as old. And now it's like, oh my God, 30s are like babies. And, and I'm thinking, and then, as I like encroached on like 28, 29, I thought, 30's not old, 50's old. And then I hit 30 and I was like, no, 50's not old, 70 is old. And then my dad turned 70 and I was like, 70 is not old, 80's old. And then it's so I don't even know what's old anymore.
So as long as you or your family is not in any of these numbers, that's old.
Well, it's funny because like, I look at my dad, for instance, and currently my dad is 72, I think, something like that. And prior to last year, this guy was going on regular, several hours long hikes out in like Western Massachusetts and everything like that. And, like he's hiked Mount Washington before up in New Hampshire. And, my dad is like always out walking and, goes out hiking whenever he can and stuff. So for me, seeing him constantly like physically fit and able to go on these, pretty strenuous hikes means that like for me, 70 clearly isn't old if he can still do this stuff. But, I think about like the stuff that I was eating when I was like 19, 20 years old. And if I ate like that now, oh my God, I would be 400 pounds. I can't, my body would be like, no, no, please don't do this to me anymore. So
Yeah,
I just
it
can't
can
do
be
it. I don't know if
tougher.
you have that experience too, but I just can't
Sometimes,
do it.
so like I've gotten into like a lot of lately I've gotten into a lot of fasting and stuff. So
Oh,
actually like I can probably eat a lot in one instance, you know?
yeah.
Um However, yeah, like normally yeah, when I was young I was able to eat like tons and tons, you know, and lots of crazy. I remember like man riding bikes. So this is under 18 and like buying like 3 liters for me, you know, 3 liter, like not even like for
Yeah.
the team, just for me. So I don't think I can like kill. I mean, I could, but I don't think I'd feel good. Like, you know, like
Yeah.
if I consumed a 3 liter. But what I've noticed, my rate probably has slowed down a lot too, just because I'm into like fasting and stuff. But
Mm.
honestly, I'm a big believer that like, um, you know, I'm saying believer because like I ain't no scientist or nothing, but just from like things I've heard, seen, and like, you know, feel in my thing, that like the less active or the more that we are not an athlete, the more or the less food we probably should be eating, especially if it's like normal food and dumb stuff, you know.
Yeah.
Um, but like, cause yeah, just seeing just from me like watch people like who are crazy active or into marathons, they can still even in the older age can probably get away with eating like craziness, but they're also like using that fuel a lot. But a lot of us, especially like me, like an artist, you know, like and I assume you too, comes in the computer age, you know, like all we do is sit there is what I'm trying to say, you know. So like what energy are we using? I'm sure our brains are working, sure, but like it's not the same as like, yo, I'm gonna run 26 miles, I'm gonna run 50 miles, you know, it's a different
Yeah.
type. So we just don't need all that, you know? So
No, we don't. And it's so funny. And that's such a great point because I think, I would be remiss if I didn't also acknowledge that, well, I can't eat like I did when I was 20 because I'm not walking everywhere and super, super active like I was when I was like 19, 20 years old and stuff like that. And even, it's interesting because out here, you think like, oh, LA, I'm going to be super fit because everybody out here is super fit. And, you know, it's nice like 340 days out of the year. So I'm going to constantly be outside because I used to run even up until mid last year. And then I did something to one of my knees. And well, that's been that for a minute. But, it's just so funny because, first of all, compared to Boston, the air quality here isn't it's not so good. And also, Boston is a much smaller city and a much walker friendly city.
mm,
And so I didn't realize how much I was active just from having to walk places in Boston until I really got settled here and didn't have to walk as many places or just didn't walk as many places. And how much that does actually contribute to, okay, well, if I'm not exerting this much energy, then I don't need to eat this many calories. It is, it's calories in, calories out. It's,
yeah.
but yeah, we artists, we live a sedentary lifestyle unless we make a conscious decision to incorporate things like, even yoga. Like yoga is a great way to combat some of that sitting because you're asking your body to stretch. You're asking your body to counter that sort of general sitting position that we get into for 12 hours a day, 14 hours a day. So,
Yeah,
but yeah,
even right
we
now I'm like
sit.
sitting in a nothing too crazy, but like it's just like a leg over leg pose, you know.
Yep.
I can't remember the proper names and stuff. I know it can be hard for some people to do, but for whatever reason, it's one of the ones that I've gravitated to quite easily.
Oh, really?
So yeah, I just do that. But like, yeah, no, I feel like I've become a big believer of this. coach up in Canada. He's like a jiu-jitsu coach, and he has like cool philosophy ideas. Like he's actually a philosophy person too, beyond just the fighting. But he has this idea of like train for your sport, and yeah, that's why like look, my sport is sitting down all day. So like that's why I'm like big believer in yoga. I'm big believer in I do that, and then I have like a little like routine of like mobility stuff. Um, just to a lot of it is just dynamic kicking or dynamic hand movement. Just to like look, I'm gonna move these joints. I'm gonna move every joint today at least once, because it might seem stupid to only move it 10 times, but if I move it 10 times, 365 a year, it adds up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, because I got a lot of things from that dude. Like the idea of volume training, like um, not train maybe training to 70% so you never soar, so that you can train every day, and then by doing it every day, it adds up, and that comes from like the theory of farmer strength. Um, people who are on the farm, they're just strong because they got carry stuff, but they don't lift weights.
Yeah.
They just carry it every day, and through time, it just worked out. So
That's a really interesting analogy, and also something where like uh, first off, how I mean, I'm super guilty. I don't know, of any time I've tried to say like go running or do any sort of like I used to like I had a short stint where I went to the gym, and that's just not for me. But but I understand how it's a great environment for certain people, but I have always gone 100%
mm,
on everything. And then the problem is kind of like, oh yeah, well, I'm sore the next day, which is like, that's great in one regard because it's like, cool, it means I
you
worked
worked
hard,
out,
I
yeah,
pushed myself. Yeah. But then it's like, great, but then I might need a day or two
to
to
recover.
recover. Yeah. So that's actually a really interesting kind of idea of, okay, don't go to 100, go to like 70 so that you push yourself, but you leave energy and you leave muscle capacity, I guess, to do the same thing the next day. I might think about trying that at some point.
You should. That thing is beyond, to me, that can be applied to life. It's not even about
Yeah.
just from working out. Um, he has it because he trains people every day. So it's like, dude, I need to be able to do this, and if I can't do it every day, then what am I doing? Um,
Yeah.
but like I always tell it to. There's a lot of. I don't know if you. I feel like you've done some more serious endeavors than me in music, so maybe you have a different camaraderie with your musician friends. But me, like, I have a lot of music friends who like, I love music, it's what I want to do, and then they like never do it, like, so like for whatever reason, whether some reasons are justified, they do have real life, but some of them aren't. But either way, I'm always like, all right, the same thing we were just talking about with the food and stuff, like, look, just
Mm.
do, as dumb as this sounds, I know it sounds dumb, but just do like 5 minutes, just do 5 minutes a
Yeah.
day, and then it'll either add it up, or even if it doesn't, like the 5 times 7 gets you a high number that my brain ain't working right now. But
35.
there you go.
But
Yeah. Hey man, those phones we were talking about initially, right? I've been spoiled.
I know, right?
Like,
It's so funny, there's this stupid meme, and maybe like I don't know, maybe I have a visceral reaction to this meme in part because my mother is an educator, I'm an educator, my father is an educator, and all that. But there's this stupid meme that I'm sure you've seen at some point where like it's some kid that's like, my math teacher said I'm not always going to have a calculator in my pocket. Look at her now. It's like, and so as a reference to like, well, look at, I have a phone. That means I have a calculator. It's like, back in like 1990, whatever, or, iPhones didn't exist and we didn't know that that was going to be a thing. So like, why you got to hate on your math teacher who was just trying to get you to think using your own brain? Like, what a crime, right?
I mean, I think both. I think both instances. I mean, granted, no one knew what was gonna come, so I think like both things
No.
are fine. I think, man, like, I think, man, I just feel like school is just taught like very and if it's as efficiently. I feel like I didn't
Yeah.
learn how important math was until I got into like let's say 20s, right? I'm like 30 something now, 33, 33, yeah. So like
You
I
lost
know that
count.
one. I don't pay attention. It doesn't matter. It only matters like one day a year. It doesn't matter. It
Yeah.
just
Yeah,
matters.
exactly.
It doesn't matter.
Yes, that's that, right.
Let me tell you, look,
Exactly.
I
It's
don't
like,
drink, but the world stopped caring once I turned 21. It's like you could walk in here now, all right, and that's it. You know, like, after that,
I
no one
mean,
really cared. Like, can't wait till he gets 25. You know,
right, right, exactly. It's like, it's so funny. It's so true. But it's such an interesting thing. And you know, I mean, I won't, I'll spare you the whole rant on the education system, but I will say this. If we don't treat education as the most important thing that every child, every person should have unfettered access to,
yeah.
we are fucked
Mm.
completely and totally 100%. Everybody needs access to education. That should not even be up for debate or anything like that,
In
because
some ways, we
when
do
you
have
don't
it.
have it, hmm?
Oh no, keep going. I'm sorry. And
Oh
then
no,
I'll
I'm just
respond.
I'm just gonna say, when you don't have education, this is why we can't have nice things. Basically,
No, I was gonna say,
like,
in some ways, like we do have access to it, but um, the idea of awareness, like, and the choices that we make in life, and we have great poet Captain Planet. I say this a lot. He once said, "The power is yours." So assuming that you do have some type of access in internet, which a lot of us in America do. Some people don't, but a lot of us do. Now we technically do have the power of education, and then now it's up to us. And I'm guilty of this in my own way, my own life. Maybe not always taking advantage of that, and I'm like learning more skills, or whatever the skill might be that you want to learn. But almost all of it can be learned online on some level, and a
yeah.
lot of it free, even like whether it be YouTube or like even now, like you ever heard of lynda.com?
Oh yeah,
I remember
absolutely.
when I was growing up, lynda.com, I swear that was like 90, I would say 95% uh artistic base. And now it's like beyond art. They have IT and business and who knows what else is on there, like normal
Mm.
real life stuff. But I get that completely free because of this online digital library in San Antonio. I just
That's
signed up for a
awesome.
card. Like I've never even seen this place. It might exist, it might not. I don't know if this library is physical. I'm not even joking. I've never been there. And funny enough, I signed up in Oceanside, California. I literally I saw a
Oh
Facebook
my.
post. Yeah, I was on vacation. I don't know if it's vacation. I was like escaping or whatever. I was like on a life quest, to find the meaning of my life. Still
Mm.
haven't found it, but but I was in Oceanside, like visiting a friend, and I saw a post, and it's one of these guys who's usually aware of things like this, and I was like, Linda Free, like that can't be, and then I literally signed up like from there, So I've never been in this location, and it still works today, and I even right now, just before this, I was hearing an audiobook that I get from that library too. So like.
Oh,
Oh, and
nice.
also free, So like a lot of this stuff is here. It's not even just YouTube. You can go beyond that. I think we also get Treehouse free, which I still haven't used, but I think it just might be lynda.com with a different name from the
Yeah.
little bit I've seen. So like the education's there assuming that you have internet access. But now it's like, do I want to see some random cat videos like the old internet used to be? Or do I want to see education? And that's maybe the part. Um
Yeah, but there's also the aspect of like critical thinking and, learning how to siphon out misinformation, and just straight falsity. I don't think falsity is a word, but
it
there you go.
is.
I've
It
made a new
is.
one.
Look, everything is
um,
a word because we make it. We make it be, right? Bootylicious wasn't a word till Beyonce made it. It's the second
this
Beyonce
is
mention,
true.
and I believe that thing's in Webster's now. So like
I think it is, right? But I mean, like, you need the critical thinking aspect of it, and you also need to be able, especially, now that we do have unfettered access, a lot of us, to the internet, where you could see information that is true and presented accordingly. and right alongside information that is not true and presented, as it is true and stuff. But also, the term access is an interesting one because, if you technically live within a certain number of miles of a public school, right, you technically have access. But that, I don't know, what the number of miles would be, but like, let's say that mileage is pretty extreme, like 50 miles, right? Like 50 miles could mean an hour drive, maybe even more one way, which how accessible is that school if your journey is, going to take a good chunk out of your day? But, it is, we as, as especially our generation and the ones to come, we do have the advantage of, the internet and very quickly being able to look things up if we want to know about something, and also having the access to certain things like, lynda.com and stuff like that, where, yeah, if I wanted to learn Photoshop, for instance, I could do that, free or at very little cost, which is phenomenal. So science, technology, it's great, But yeah, I mean, going back to something that you said earlier about, being an artist and everything. And this is something where, the 70% rule would never apply to me. I've been a musician since I was a kid. I started taking piano lessons. I asked, unlike, a lot of people whose parents like kind of force them into piano lessons, and kind of make them stick with it and whatever. I asked my dad for piano lessons when I was a kid. And I will never forget this. It was a night in July, and my dad was at the time teaching piano lessons and guitar lessons and bass lessons in the basement of our home. And the basement, I think, was like below our living and family room. So like we had heating grates and stuff that, some of the sound would come through. So I would hear what his students were, playing downstairs. And he had this one student, Maria, and she was about my age or so. And she was taking lessons with him and she was very good. And I really wanted to be able to play like her. So I remember my dad and I had come in we had an above ground pool at that house, and we had come in from a swim. And I said to him, I said, Dad, I want to take piano lessons. And, so I started taking piano lessons with him because he asked if I wanted to take lessons from him or somebody else. And naturally I was like, I want to take lessons from you. So, I think I was probably about 12, 13-ish when the idea of college, started to become a topic of discussion between, my dad and me and between my mom and me. I'd kicked around a lot of different ideas, but I had asked my dad where he went to college, and he had said that he had gone to Berkeley in Boston. And I asked him what he studied, and he said arranging and composition. And I was like, wait, hold up. You can go to college for music? And he said, yeah. And I said, wait, hold on. So you can go to, and I was just like, I was trying to piece it together. I was like dumbfounded because everybody goes to college to become a doctor or a lawyer or a teacher, or, I don't know, a business person.
Yeah.
And I had started to kind of, my childhood kind of went from being very good to, having some issues and stuff like that. And I feel like, everybody struggles, with just going through puberty and stuff as it is. But, I had a pretty rough middle and high school time. And I started to really connect with music in a way that I would practice piano 4 to 8 hours a day. Partially because I just really loved it. I really felt like I had found something that was, going to get me out of bed. And that was going to keep me from like, just turning into a really, really, really miserable human. So I've always had it ingrained in me. Like, I don't do anything half-assed. I don't do anything that I don't want to put my whole heart into. And that, of course, unfortunately, the other end of that is I have always had a horrific perfectionist complex. And so I think that also drove me to put 100% of myself into everything. It's like, I have to get this. I have to be perfect at this. I have to, like, I can't fail, because whatever, like, really? But I went to Berkeley like my dad did. And I did not study arranging and composition, though, because that actually wasn't a major. Composition was a major, but not arranging and composition. But music synthesis was a major, and it was something that I knew nothing about, but it sounded really cool because I was like, wait, you're telling me not only can I go to music college, but I can learn how to make music with computers, like electronic music and stuff? This sounds really flippin' cool. And I'm paying for my education, so I should be able to study what I want. So I made the choice to study music synthesis. And from there, it's just been a downward spiral into the wormhole of, I can sit...
Real quick, because you said it was music synthesis?
Yeah.
And that's defined, is that defined similar as composition, but just it's electronic music there?
It's basically what music synthesis is. And actually, for anybody who might be listening, it is currently, the name is no longer music synthesis. It's actually electronic production and design now. They went through a name change a few years back.
That name sounds more normal to what I'm used to.
Yeah. It's interesting because, so music synthesis, it was part of the music technology division. And it had a brother major, if you will, or cousin major, sibling major, of music production and engineering. But music production engineering, MPE for short, focused more, on the recording studio. Actually, like a traditional recording studio, being in front of big consoles and actually being part of a team that made records. So you learned how to record in that studio setting, and how to like lead recording sessions, and how to actually like produce instrumentalists and produce vocalists and stuff like that, how to mix and how to master as well. The music synthesis / electronic production and design major takes a little bit of that in terms of understanding general production, understanding recording, understanding mixing, and mixes it with composition, with sound design, with sampling. Like, actually, I took a sampling class with one of the best instructors there. His name was Michael Brigida. And he would just take us on field trips every few weeks. Like, we'd go outside around the corner to the park nearby and just like bang on fences with things and record that. And, yeah, it was like, it was so fun.
I imagine, yeah.
And it really kind of shaped the way that I thought about things, and even still now to this day, shaped the way that I approach things on my own stuff. And, so yeah, I took composition classes. I took, one of my favorite classes there was a class taught by my favorite teacher in the world, Jeff Baust. And it was a composition for commercial production class. So like, it was basically broken down into like 5 projects. And the first week you would get the briefing. And so like, you might have to come up with a 30-second commercial for Verizon that sounds like, world beat influenced techno or something like that. And then you would bring in a draft of it the following week. You'd present it to the class, you'd get critique, and then you would go back and you'd do the final draft and you'd present that the following week. So it was kind of like 5 projects broken down into 3-week segments like that. And it really taught me how to be creative, but work under a deadline and manage my time efficiently, which, by the way, is something I'm still learning.
I think all of us.
Yeah. And because it's such a dichotomy. Like, you can't force a time limit on creativity, but at the same point in time, yeah, exactly. You can, but
have you not seen the 10-minute beat videos or whatever? I forgot what magazine makes that.
Yeah, no, like, and it's funny because like you have all that sort of stuff, and I think those time limits, what they helped me do was they helped me really kind of figure out, all right, I have this kind of time. I know that I need to get this done. How do I go about doing this? What am I going to start with? As an artist, I've done everything in terms of time management or not in terms of time management, but in terms of things taking a certain amount of time. I've recorded vocals in my tiny closet with literally, this closet had like 18 inches, if that, I might be being generous, 18 inches of width for me to fit in. I've recorded vocals in a closet to make a 12-hour deadline for a pitch, for some ad that needed vocals on it and stuff like that. So done that. And I've also written and produced an EP that, effectively took a year and a half for 4 songs, so it's like you get both ends of it, really.
I always wonder, about that. I asked, I think maybe 2 or 3 episodes ago, because they were recorded out of order, so that's why I'm like confused about which episode. But anyway, there's this artist, his name's Richie Branson, and same thing. I think he said his album's taken maybe a few years, and actually Jamie too. Like I think she said like she was working on one for like 4 years or something. So, but it's only like recently a lot of my philosophies have changed. But like, I'm like, why? Why has it taken that long? And on some end, I do understand it, but like, for my stuff, I don't necessarily have a deadline. But I do have the idea of like, at least now, because I when I was younger it was different, but like less about perfection and more like I'll get better as I do. Like almost like perfection to me now is the journey. Like even though it may never happen, perfection will happen as long as I keep doing. So all I got to do is do this. This doesn't even have to be great, but this has to exist so that the next one exists, so that the next one exists, etc. Until perfection is achieved via maybe song 8,000, like not so much song 4, you know what I mean? So I kind of have those ideas, so I don't necessarily get hung up, and I know I might not be the best mixer because that's not the fun part for me. but it's like, you know what, I'm at a level where at least like, all right, it sounds like this guy knows how to get things to sound not like trash, like, it might be maybe a few steps from like, top tier radio or whatever, but it doesn't sound like, he just day one'd it, so
it's such an interesting thing. And first off, shout out to Jamie Billings, aka the Unicorn Princess. She's the Jamie in question from
new
a couple
album
minutes
coming
ago.
soon. Sugar.
She's wonderful. She's super talented and she's super hardworking. And her music is really unique and fun. It's just, and I'll push back and I'll say, I don't think that there's ever a point where we hit that point of perfection. And I say this as a perfectionist, and it is one of the things I think, probably the most important thing that I've learned as an artist is the ability to let go of something that is not and will never be perfect. And, it's been an interesting journey the past several years where When I graduated Berkeley, I was brand new to music production. I was brand new to that whole realm of things. I came to Berkeley as a piano player, and I left with an amalgam of skills and thoughts and ideas and a little bit of ego, thinking that, well, now I have a college degree, so I know everything, which
it's nothing. It's nothing.
It's nothing. It is like and I got so much great information, but I was left with a lot of questions, and I had, really what it prepared me to do was expand on the things that I learned and figure out how I was going to use some of these techniques in my own way. But I didn't even know what I was going to be doing. I knew that I really resonated with this commercial production class, so I'd like to go do that. But I also got thrown into, very haphazardly, the trance and progressive world, where I started singing on tracks.
Which is where I've noticed or got known of you. Or I said that wrong, but you know what I'm trying to say. Became aware of you. That's what it is.
Yeah. And that is not at all what I set out to do. And I never fancied myself a singer, to be honest. I just happened to sing in my high school chorus, and I happened to do musical theater, and I took 8 months of voice lessons, just because. And, I happened to, for my senior project at Berkeley, write and produce a 3-song EP. But I never fancied myself a singer. I certainly didn't fancy myself a songwriter. But the opportunity to put those hats on presented itself to me in a very safe and comfortable way. And so I said, why not? Well, sure, this could be cool. And it was for a minute, and it quickly revealed a lot of things that were not cool about it. And it quickly showed me that, first off, I'm not spending tens of thousands of dollars on a college degree because, oh, by the way, I was now paying back my student loans.
Yeah. That's the best part of the experience. Oh,
it really is. It really is. But I thought to myself, wait a second, this isn't what I just poured the last 4 years of my life into. But I don't want to not do it, but I want to use some of the things that I learned more to my advantage. So I started remixing my features. And so I would get a production credit as well as a singing and a vocal credit. And from there, and by the way, right when I met you, I had just left my job at Berkeley, because after I graduated from there, I actually took a job working in the music synthesis department, which was really fun, and it allowed me the space to solidify a lot of the things that I had learned while continuing to work on my craft and become a stronger producer, become a stronger writer, and pay off my student loans.
Never forget. Hashtag never forget.
Right. Hashtag never forget. So I had just quit my job at Berkeley, and I had worked there for several years, and I was basically trying to divorce myself from all features and only write and produce everything myself. And so 2013,
I do actually remember that moment. I feel like you said something like you weren't going to sing on no one else's tracks anymore, or you only want to sing on your stuff. There was something like that.
And this kind of goes back to the sort of what we were talking about a little bit ago of, as an artist nowadays, it is very difficult to just be in one lane, to just do one thing. And, I could have made the decision to try and achieve the kind of status that people like Kirsty Hawkshaw, Aruna, Jan Johnston, like those names had achieved. And by the way, rightly so. But that's not really what my heart wanted. And, I decided that I really wanted to learn and refine my production skills. And so it meant taking a giant step backward. It meant really kind of like disappearing for all intents and purposes. I know that I didn't, but it meant disappearing for a long time and really allowing myself to spend a few years writing so many songs that will never see the light of day. And I have stuff on my hard drive that is fully produced. It's, vocals have been tracked, backings, harmonies, everything. It's been mixed, almost to the point maybe even some of them have been mastered. And they'll never see the light of day. Why? Because they were good exercises for me. And they allowed me the chance to better my songwriting, better my production, better my mixing, and with the EP that finally just came out, and with a lot of the stuff that I've done, having chose to release it or not, I've gotten myself to a point where perfect is not in my vocabulary for this stuff. I don't care about perfect. It's never going to be perfect. I am always going to find some flaw that I could continue to tweak. I'm always going to find something that I wish I did a little bit differently. Oh, I don't like that lyric. Oh, I wish I'd sung that note differently. Oh, the kick is too loud. Oh, this mix is too dull. Whatever. Is it the best that I can do with the skill set, the experience, and the knowledge that I have right now? That's really the sort of like the be all end all, is when I feel like I'm hitting that point at the end of a production, at the end of a song, where, I'm making the most minute tweaks on shit that probably nobody's gonna know.
No one. Yeah.
No one, I ask myself like, okay, this tweak, how much of a difference is this going to make? Will this tweak make me happy or happier with the overall product? And is this truly necessary so that when I listen to this 6 months from now, I'll feel good that I spent those extra few minutes or those extra few days or whatever? That's really what I'm always striving for, is, have I said what I want to say? Have I, with both my lyrics and my production, and have I done everything to the best of my ability, knowing that at some point my abilities will hopefully be better and more expansive, I'm not a good mix engineer either, by the way. Like, I don't consider myself a mix engineer at all. I just mix my own stuff because it's kind of like, for me, an extension of the production process. And also my funds are very limited. And, so I also want to get better at mixing my stuff, so it's kind of like spend some time, like right now, that, you and I have had chats about the whole Pat Pattison book, Writing Better Lyrics, and some of the lyric exercises. I finally just bought that book recently and have been kind of doing some of the exercises and everything, because I do want to work on my songwriting. I want to learn to become a better writer. I want to write my songs a bit more efficiently, a bit quicker. And I want to explore some new tactics that maybe I haven't thought of before. I also want to continue to refine my production skills and my mixing skills. So it's like, and I feel like that's necessary with where I'm at in my career, because this is the kind of artist, producer, writer that I want to be. So, it takes it takes a while, but and it can, but I can't do that if I'm not investing 100% of myself into whatever the task of the day is, but that's me, like that's
Oh, for sure. We all have to do our own journey.
yeah, exactly, but
Let me,
it is an interesting journey, that's for sure.
yeah.
So
Let me I'm gonna do the proper I feel like I always forget to do this because I like talking and getting lost in conversation, but I'll do. Let me ask a proper
I just realized
question.
I'm like, you probably need to get going soon, yeah?
No. I mean, well,
Okay.
I'm doing this at home, and like everybody's here already. So like,
Okay, cool.
but yeah, I just don't want to waste. I don't want to take up too much of your time, man. So, but let me. I feel like I never do this because I just like letting the conversation go wherever it goes. But I'm gonna ask a few album questions, and then I got like these
Sweet.
life questions I like to ask people, and
Brilliant.
then we can wrap it up. Actually, I think I'm gonna say this one thing because I think it's kind of trippy, and then I'll ask the album questions. But I think it was funny. It's like one of these I started thinking about it maybe like a week or two ago. But my friend asked me today, like, so what's going on? He's in New York, and like I grew up there, so we only kind of just talk online because I haven't been there in a minute. But yeah, he's like, what's happening in your life and like highlights, right? And then one of the things I said was like, oh, today I'm gonna do a podcast with you, and I said that because I was thinking about it like a week or two ago, and just I'm one of those people. I just keep doing stuff. I tend to forget to reflect, and then but every now and then somebody will like pull my head up and like, look at all this cool stuff you've done. Like numbers may not be there, whatever, but it's still cool that you did it. But I was looking at I was like, man, this is crazy. Like this person who I used to listen to, like if I type your name in my, like I use Fubar Player. You probably never heard of that because it's a
No, I
Windows
haven't.
thing.
What is it?
It's a Windows player instead of like iTunes
Gotcha.
or whatever. But like, it can catalog like all your music on your hard drive. So I was like, man, if I type your name in my hard drive, I got a bunch of stuff. I got like a bunch of mixes like from like 2012, 13, like all these older years and stuff,
Oh,
the
yeah.
guest mixes that you did on shows and stuff. And then I'm like, I drove out to Austin to see you live, like
Which
at
was so
Lanai.
cool.
Yeah,
That was
I'm surprised you
super
remember
dope.
that. But
Of course I
that
do.
was a time that, let me tell you, like I would end up becoming the guy who would go to Austin all the time, to the point that there was a point where I had a normal 9 to 5 job Monday through Friday, and I would just stay over at my friend's house Friday night to Sunday. But like at that point in my time, like driving to Austin was scary. I didn't have a smartphone. Maybe someone did, but I didn't have a smartphone. So like,
Yeah.
that was still like a thing for me. But I was like, look, man, it's either now or like, just go. Stop being a punk. But yeah, it's just crazy. Like, yo, like the same person I was listening to and I saw live once, now I'm like having like email conversations with like about like songwriting stuff, and like this is crazy. Like I don't know. It's just like I think people always talk about like manifesting things, as you get like deeper on the path and stuff. I was like, this is crazy. Like now I'm like talking, like we're dissecting the craft together. I'm like, that's insane, So yeah.
Well, it's always it's always nice to like. I mean, this is kind of the sort of be all end all, right? Like at the end of the day, it's nice to just have other people to nerd out with who understand and can appreciate certain like commonalities, right? Like this is actually one of the things that I love about teaching is, because like I teach music production, songwriting, music theory at a school called Icon Collective here in Burbank. And it's a small school, but one of the things that's really great is just like when I can connect with people who are, hungry for information and are just like really into learning and really interested in being part of a discussion. It's just like, it's great because then I feel like, oh, I can help people. This is good. This is my why. Like I'm here to help people, like, but it also gives me something, it's a selfish thing too, because I get to learn And I get to figure out how to be a better communicator. I get to figure out how to be a better artist. I get to figure out like, all right, what are the things that matter to me, to other people, you know, and how can I best serve the people that I'm trying to help, as well as, you know, serve myself. Because, you know, earlier you were saying like, you know, it's important to have, you know, to communicate with yourself. I make a joke when I teach, we teach intervals the second week of Keys 1. It's the entry-level Keys course. And, you know, I always make the joke. I'm like, well, you should have a good relationship with yourself, but you can't be in a relationship with yourself as a means to describe like there is no interval of a first. We have to have two different notes to have an interval, right? But it is really important to have a good relationship with yourself for a variety of reasons, but certainly as a means to grow and really figure out like the meaning of life, if you will, and your purpose in this wildly spinning, rotating dot that is somewhere in the universe, you know? So, yeah. But yeah, I of course I remember I loved that trip to Austin. I love Austin in general. And it's always, you know, I remember the people that, you know, come up to me and are really nice and are, you know, just like, hey, I really dig your stuff. Like you know, and I remember people that like drive a long way to come to shows and stuff like that. Like that's, you know, I never took that for granted. And I still don't, you know, it's one of those things where like, I mean, especially as I've gotten older, and I say older, I know that I'm not old, but as I've exited my early 20s and even exited my 20s in general, you know, I made some missteps when I was younger, and you know, it seemed like people kind of just were trying to take advantage of me. I made some missteps, but you know, now, how do I not make those missteps? I look for ways where it's like, hey, if someone's generally interested in having a conversation, and genuinely interested in something where maybe I can help, I'll help. You know, like it's nothing to me. You know, it's nothing to me, and hopefully it could be something to somebody else. So, yeah,
I do that a lot too, in the things that I feel confident in. With yeah, like it's a lot of times, like I would never say I'm experts at any of these things, but yeah, like with some people, just like we were talking before, I've been doing a lot of the research, you know, on like the food or the fasting or the yoga or the meditation, or even like a lot of the creative stuff, you know, helping other people, whether it be with podcast or their audio or video things, because I've dabbled in all of these to a certain level of skill, different in each area, but you know, I can talk a lot about each topic. They've consumed my life forever. I can do the whole thing on meditation if you want. I've same essay you wrote for me. Thank you again for that. I've written that on meditation to some people.
That's awesome. I would love to read that, by the way. You can feel free to send that my way. I would love to read your thoughts on that.
I'm going to make a note of it and I'll send it to you like in a little bit. All right, but tell me about this album. Like, you used to know me, because it sounds like you said you put all of yourself into it, so I'm sure it's not just tight. Like, I feel like me, I sometimes, I don't know. No, that's not true, because I'm just a diary guy too, actually. Now I think about it, that's all I'll do is just talk about my life. So what am I talking about? But I told you already, but my favorite track is Can't Sleep. Like, it just reminded me of Porcupine Tree, like in that old era where they used to like make these kind of orchestral sections, and it would sound like dark, and I don't know. It's had this cool jam vibe to it. So.
Oh man, thank you so much.
And then when it flowed from You Don't See, and the first time it came up from You Don't See, like I was like, man, it's a long ass track, but she going hard on this second. She going hard on this one, and then like I was driving, so then I would check, and I was like, oh, it's over already, and I was like, oh, okay, these were those weren't. It wasn't just one track, you know, like
nope, it was two, and so I guess like. Oh man. So I'll try to keep this as concise as possible, but the so you don't you used to know me is a 4-track EP that I started. I'm actually currently sitting in my living room on a very comfortable couch, and this is I just coincidentally this is actually where the EP was born, because I was lying on the couch. I think I had come home from teaching. I was teaching a full day. My husband was someplace on a work trip, so he wasn't here for a few days. And so I was just chilling on the couch, and I don't know, I was like half watching something on TV, and I was a little tired. And all of a sudden, sitting on the couch, and I just got, you don't, no, you don't, no, you don't, no, you don't see, like stuck in my head. And I was like, huh, that's kind of cool. Well, all right, whatever. And so I'm like passively watching TV, kicking around this little melodic, and the lyrics at that point did actually come to me. It was literally all of that at once, which is not often, but that did happen that time. And so I'm like, okay, it's 11 o'clock. I really I had a couple nights of like no sleep. So like I don't normally go to bed at 11. I go to bed usually a few hours later, but, so I was like, yeah, but you know what? I could catch up on sleep if I go to bed now. So I was like, all right, I'll make a bargain with myself. If in 30 minutes I still have this idea kicking in my head, I'll go to the studio and I'll get out whatever I can get out. And if in 30 minutes I'm kind of over it or I'm tired, I'll go to bed. You can probably imagine where it went. I'll give you a hint. It wasn't to bed. And so I went to the studio and I just sat down at my keyboard and I just plunked out the chords that, of course, I was also hearing in my head at the time. Because when I get ideas, I hear everything. I hear the melody. I hear the beat. I hear the bass line. I hear the chords. I hear the instrumentation and whatever other little like things are going on. And it's really a race to get everything in my head into the DAW as quickly as I can before I lose those ideas. So I did that. And by the time 4 a.m. came around, I had sketched out the entire track. I had sketched out the whole melody and I knew what it was going to do and everything like that. So that's the first track. It's called You Don't See. That's the first track on the EP. And from there, the rest of the EP actually it's not ordered in the order that I wrote the songs, but yeah, so the chord progression in You Don't See for the chorus is, it's basically a 1 major, 2 minor, flat 7 major, and then a 4 major. So it's in the key of B flat. So you've got a B flat chord, a C minor chord, an A flat chord, and an E flat chord. And one day when LA was having its rare, like gray, kind of rainy type of day, probably about this time last year, to be honest, I was just like sitting in the studio, kind of like messing around and stuff. And I really did like the end part of You Don't See, where that beat kind of just like takes over and it's just sort of like doing its thing. And I thought, it would be kind of cool to sort of like keep that going as like the next track. And so I was sitting down and I kind of was like, all right, let me start with that. I don't want to keep the chord progression the same because that'll be boring. And so what did I do? That C minor chord became a B chord, technically C flat major for all my music theory nerds out there. And the A flat major chord became an A flat minor chord. And so what you got was that 1 major, 2 minor, flat 7 major, 4 major got turned to a 1 major, flat 2 major, flat 7 minor, and then 4 major. And so I basically just flipped out the C for C flat, and it gave you that like kind of eerie sort of like chord progression that I really dug. I was like, yes, this is it the second that I got it. And then so I got this idea for this string line that just was like, and I was like, this sounds like it should be on like some sort of like the Love Boat type of thing or whatever. I never even really watched that show, but I just remember it like vaguely being on when I was really, really, really little.
Yeah.
Um, and but I was like, nah, whatever, I'm going with it. And from there, this idea that I had been kicking around, like I remember just lying awake in bed one night, feeling like my whole body was like constricting itself, and kind of like I think the wind was like howling and stuff like that, and it kind of just felt like everything outside was like going to come and get me. Like it felt like I was in a zombie movie. So so this is where the idea of like can't sleep, everything is coming for me kind of came from, where it was like I kind of took that idea that I'd been randomly kicking about maybe a month or two prior in just like a random thought, and I took that, and that became the only lyric for that song. And I just got in front of the mic and just went ham on like, really trying to like channel my inner Trent Reznor of like getting in the mic and just being like, can't sleep, like just like really trying to like be as creepy and like over dramatic as I could be.
Yeah.
And I think, like it kind of felt like a really like perfect juxtaposition of like this chord progression that I thought was really beautiful, the string line that I thought was really beautiful, but also kind of haunting in a way. And from there, so that one basically, Can't Sleep was basically done in a day, all things considered. You Don't See was sketched out, the arrangement and the melody were sketched out in that one night, but the lyrics actually took me a bit. In that night, I had written the first verse and the pre and the chorus. The second verse did take me a little bit longer, but it came together. And then it just took, that song went through, it started off in A, but it felt like when I did the demo vocals, it just felt like it was lacking in energy, and I just felt like I sounded a bit tired. So I was like, oh, let me just bump this up. And so I did a demo pass real quick in B and a demo pass in B flat, and B flat allowed me to kind of utilize my voice a little bit better in the low range and the verses than B did. B, I kind of sounded a little thin. So anyway, those two were pretty much done. And then Did You Know, which is the fourth track, that was really my baby. And this song went through, I want to say 8 or 9 different versions.
Oh man.
Yeah. This was the one that I almost gave up on, because I had started writing it probably in December of 2017. So You Don't See, I started writing in August of 2017. Did You Know, I started writing it in December of 2017. And it went through so many different keys, so many different tempos, so many different chord progressions, so many different vibes. The lyrics were rephrased and rewritten and everything like that. It actually started off in first person, and then it just didn't feel right. So I started in second person, and then I needed to kind of sit with that, because it ended up sort of becoming, as does, a lot of stuff, a letter to myself, kind of like that sort of conversation that, you might have with yourself of kind of, I think something you mentioned earlier, it's like, why are you doing this to yourself? Like, why are you doing this? What's going on? And so it ended up, when I kind of framed it like that, the lyrics started to come together, and then the rest of it came together. And and then I realized, like, all my songs are in B flat. Cool. but my first two songs are 100 beats per minute. My third song is 116 or something like that. No, I think it is 116.667.
Oh.
Which, by the way, I used to pride myself on doing these stupid little things of like, I have a song that is 123.4567 beats per minute because I thought like, oh, that's just cute. You know, it's kind of giant FU to people who want to, you know, have regular tempos. You know what? I learned my lesson. I will never make that kind of asshole move again because when you go to edit vocals in Melodyne, Melodyne does not accept 116.667 beats per minute. And even though it's rounded up to 117, so even though it's really close,
slightly off.
Yeah. So I had a little more work cut out for me than I had planned.
I just want to say real quick, I've been guilty of that too. I do a lot of the point zeros just because I want to be quote unquote different. I'm a 432 guy occasionally, you know. So all types of little quirks, fine. Like just to make myself different, even though no one's gonna know, you know.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I thought like I'm gonna stick it to the tempo man, and then I went, wow, joke's on me. All right, Leva, you can't do that anymore, you know. So at least not with tracks on which I'm trying to incorporate vocals. So I realized like, okay, maybe there just needs to be one more little thing, and so I started messing with. I have an app on my phone, and I think you can get this for Android as well. But Isotope makes it, and it's called Spire. And it is a way better than your voice notes recorder app. Why? Because it allows you to do multi-tracking. It doesn't allow you to do multi-tracking. It allows you to have multiple tracks as part of one recording. So you can't record, say, like 4 different input sources at once just through your phone, unless they have an actual like Spire like kit with like a little cylindrical thing that you can actually use for multi-track recording. But
I'm getting it now, by the way.
Yeah, it's a free app. And so why this is better than voice notes is even though I can only record one track at a time, what I use this for is I use it for when I get an idea in my head. If I get a melody, often, like I said, I get the chord progression as well. So I'll sing the melody on one track, and then I'll go in and I'll actually sing the bass line, the roots of each chord.
So you'll make the whole song with your voice.
Yeah, you know, or at least as much as I can sketch out. And that also comes in handy too, like if I have an idea for a harmony part and stuff like that. But I also use this for like field recordings. And so like I was back east last June, and they were having some crazy thunderstorms. And so I recorded some of them on my phone. And I got this idea to kind of use some of those recordings in just kind of like an ambient track. And I took vocals from the beginning of Did You Know? And I repitched them and I stretched them and I kind of built like this sort of evolving chord that kind of just sort of moved, and it became this chord and then it became this other thing and whatever. And I had birds and thunder going on and stuff like that. And I was like, cool. This is just minute-long little interlude, if you will, that became what I called Out There Somewhere. And so then what I felt like I had finally was 4 tracks that for me told a story, and it told a story that I was really afraid to tell for a long time. And that is, you know, one of self-sabotage. It's one of struggle. It's one of really trying to figure out why are you doing things and who are you doing things for, you know, and really like battling with a sense of a lack of self-worth, you know. And so You Don't See is actually born and bred out of kind of anytime anyone struggles with depression or anxiety or drug abuse, or for me, it was eating disorders and also anxiety. Um, you know, people who don't understand love to just say snap out of it. People who don't understand what it's like to battle an addiction or to battle an eating disorder or to battle depression or other mental illness don't understand that it's not a light switch that you can just flip on or flip off. And so you don't see the lyrics really kind of came out of this idea that like, I just sometimes want to scream at people who, sit there and wring their hands and say, well, these people that are dying of heroin overdose, or of opioid addiction, they're making a choice. They choose to do that to themselves. It's like, really? Really? I don't know. That's no, or, oh, well, you should just choose to be happy, then you wouldn't be depressed all the time. It's like, right. Okay. No, so, and then, Did You Know kind of wraps that all up as well. And, kind of is my, hey, you need to be kinder to yourself. You need to be in charge. You need to learn to take charge of the things that you can control in a positive way. So the EP is actually designed that you can start it from any of the songs and continue through the cycle, and it will give you maybe a different journey or a different perspective. So like you can start it from Out There Somewhere and then go to Did You Know, and then go to You Don't See, and then go to Can't Sleep and stuff like that, which is a trick that I very shamelessly ganked from Imogen Heap with her album Ellipse. She kind of ordered her tracks in the same sort of fashion. Like you could start from any of her tracks and play through the cycle, and it'll tell you a little bit of a different story and everything. So
what they always say, the best artists steal or something.
Yeah, like
I'm gonna try that. I've not heard it out of 1, 2, 3, 4 order.
It's such an interesting thing, and again, it's one of those things that like I would do. It's one of those things that I would think of that I will notice, but you might not notice it, or anybody else who listens to it might not notice, because the songs are in order 1, 2, 3, 4. But that's okay, because that's kind of sort of like the Easter egg of the EP. And the other thing too, and this is crazy, but I will acknowledge, part of the reason that I made it was literally an 11th hour decision to add that 4th track in. Out There Somewhere was written, my EP came out on December 13th. Out There Somewhere, I want to say, was written like November 30th. Like it was an 11th hour thing, because I really wanted it to show up on Spotify as an EP. And if you have less than 4 tracks, it shows up as a single.
Is that I was wondering, because I feel like everything got shifted. Like, like maybe just last year, because that happened to me too. Yeah. So I wanted it to show up as an EP, and Spotify requires 4 tracks for that at least. So I was kind of like, well, cool. This is a way to sort of round things out. And yeah, so it felt complete, and you used to know me. Why I settled on that title was it just felt right. It felt like, for one, anybody who did know of me through some of my trance and progressive collaborations from several years ago knew me as a completely different persona, if you will. Like I still get branded trance vocalist, and yet I'm not. And I haven't been for a long time. I think you were afraid of that. I think when I first asked you to come on the podcast, and I was like, I almost feel bad, because I don't think I made it across. But it's like, man, I'm not even that person anymore either. But anybody I've liked over the years, like I always liked that music from that time, but like, you know, we all have like our journey. So like I don't even listen to trance. Like I always have respect
Yeah.
for that time that I liked it, but I don't even listen to it like right now.
Yeah.
Um,
And it's something too where like I also, I that is for all intents and purposes one of my roots. Like I think I have several roots, one being when I was a child, asking my dad for piano lessons. Two would be, Mrs. Hammond, my high school chorus teacher, who basically like was my savior through high school.
mm,
And three would be Berkeley and all of the people that made that experience what it was and everything like that. But so in that regard, I owe a lot of who I am now, both as a person and as an artist, to the trance community, trance and progressive community, because had I not got my start there, I don't know that I'd be here.
mm,
Um, but at the same time, it is frustrating to still be pegged a trance vocalist when, like, it's like, oh, really? So, I kind of had to, kind of use that as like, hey, you used to know me as this. This is me now. But it also was kind of, I think, in a way, one more point for myself, because I don't know if you've ever known anybody who has struggled with eating disorders, or I mean, really, anybody that struggles with depression, anxiety, eating disorders, etc. It really takes its root in you, and it really does shape your outlook and your perspective on the world and your outlook and your perspective on yourself. And I had a lot of very destructive behaviors that sabotaged relationships, not just romantic relationships, but friendships, that, prevented me from doing things that would better my career or doing things that would make me happy. And so it's really kind of also a means for me to say, like, hey, look in the mirror. You used to know me, but here's who I've become. I'm not that person anymore. At least I'm trying not to be, like, so it felt like a very appropriate title for the fact that for all intents and purposes, my Spotify is blank from basically 2014 to 2018. Maybe
yeah, I
there's
see
like a
that.
re-release here
I
and
have it
there.
open
Yeah,
right now. It's funny you say that, but I have it open
Oh,
right now.
nice.
It's just for now to, I think, 2014,
Yeah.
2018.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not for the fact that I never took any time off. I never quit music. I never took a break. It was just really taking that time to adjust to, I moved from Boston to LA at the end of 2013. So it was taking that time to adjust to a completely new city and a new way of life and everything like that. And also just trying to figure out, learn my production chops, really sort of like wear one hat at a time and try to figure out, like, all right, what's my lane? And how do I do this to a place where I will continue to want to do it? And how do I do this where when I'm ready to change lanes, I have the confidence and the ability to do so, So,
I feel like some lines in that sentence, like I relate to even now in my musical journey.
Yeah.
Let me ask. So from looking here, and I noticed this a while ago. You're independent now, right? Because you're using like DistroKid to release them.
Yeah, I go through DistroKid for everything.
What made you choose that? That's another topic I could go on forever about distribute. I won't, but I'm just curious. What made you choose that?
A lot of research. I'm a huge proponent of, and I would say this spills into several aspects of my life. I am not afraid to spend days, weeks, months, if I have to, researching things that I feel are important in order for me to make what I can consider to be the best decision for myself. So I was looking at things like TuneCore, CD Baby, there are a few others.
There's a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. I read some articles, I read some, just some seemingly well-written comparisons among this versus that, which, in an email, I can forward you whatever I have. I think I bookmarked them.
I'll take it too. Yeah. There's a good email trade. Yeah.
Yeah. And I started asking around with people that I know and people that are in a similar position to me. And what does that mean? Well, part of the reason that I didn't give this EP to a label was because I genuinely wasn't certain where it would be a good fit. Ideally, a label like Ghostly International would be like, I love their stuff. And I feel like maybe I might have put it there, or at least pitched it there. But I also knew that, maybe the production quality wasn't quite up to their standard, which, by the way, I will call myself out. I should have at least taken the chance and sent it, at least given myself the chance to get a no instead of just like writing that off. But I also thought, no, part of me really wants to release this myself because I don't want anybody else getting involved. I want to do everything on my terms and on my time. So it seemed like with anybody that I talked to, former students of mine that were also kind of in the same, like, I want to be able to release my stuff whenever I'm ready to release it. It seemed like DistroKid had the best overall reviews. And some of the perks of DistroKid are that instead of paying per release, like I think
the annual fee,
TuneCore, I don't know if it's TuneCore or CBaby or whatever, but there's DistroKid charges an annual fee as opposed to a per upload fee. Now, because I only released 2 things last year, one being a single track. Actually, I guess I released 3 things. One being a single track, another being a single track, and then the EP, of course. I think I got my money's worth on that because I think I would have had to have paid $10 or $20 per upload for some of the other sites. So and I have the middle tier. I started off with the low tier, which was like $20. And then before the EP release, I upgraded to the middle tier, which is, it gives you the opportunity to choose your release date, whereas the low tier doesn't.
Okay, was that the main reason?
That was actually the big one. And the other thing is, like, I am thinking about, okay, what's next? I am planning on releasing a lot of my music primarily on my own, which means I would like stuff not to be listed as like copyright 77 whatever DK Records.
Yeah, because I was like, if you did that
if
you did that for now, you could have changed it for this one and just called it something.
Right, exactly. But I could have, and in a way I probably should have, but my mental capacity for all of that was exhaused.
It's
the
a
most
lot.
important
it's
thing.
A lot. It's a lot. I did the research dive too. And I had a debate about this with another artist in Austin, and we definitely differed. I can tell he didn't agree at all. He was like happy with the knowledge he have, and I was like, well, I'm happy too, right? I don't regret it at all, but I also like. My concern, maybe it is a regret, but I don't like to have regrets. So, but it's like, man, I used up a lot of time learning all this. I'm grateful for this knowledge, but I'm like, and it's speaking for me, not you. You're
right.
But I'm like, man, like I could have like done something crazy, like got good at music, because I feel like a lot of us, like at least grass is always greener. That's why I keep saying I'm talking about me and not you. Like outside looking in, I'm like, wow, you got to like touch some of these like cool real things, versus me, like and a lot of my friends, like we haven't done anything, like near that. A lot of us, I do have one friend who like now like Armin played like his music, and that was pretty trippy just hearing that.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah. Like, yeah, he's done some. See, but I don't even know if it's his. I just still don't even think it's his living. But at least now, like real people are playing his music, So, but maybe one day it will be. But
that's something though.
It is. It's great.
Something.
I was happy. That wasn't even me, and I was super happy when that dude said his, because it was just like, yo, like, it's funny. I told you, staying at Austin 3 days on the weekend. Like, that's whose house I was staying. Literally that guy. So it's like I was real close to that dude, and it's like now Armin's saying this guy's name and Ferry and all these people. I was like, this is crazy. Even though they're just saying his name on a radio show, and it's still cool. You know, it's like, wow, like I know that guy. Like, I could call him right now. You know, but
well, and it's so much better. You know, like it's so much better to take joy in other people's successes. You know, like there's so much negativity and competition in this industry where it's like, oh, you know, this person got on this playlist for Spotify. How does this person have 5 million plays on this song? This song is
to
garbage.
feel that way. It's easy to feel that way.
And I will say this. I have definitely been I have definitely gotten into that mindset of like, this song is absolute garbage. How does it have 10 million plays on Spotify? You know, but at the same time, when my friends have, you know, cool opportunities come to them, you know, yeah, like there was a time when I was first starting out that my mentality was like, oh, you know, I wish that I could have those cool opportunities. It was never like, oh, that person doesn't deserve it. But it was a little bit of like, I wish I could have those opportunities. What do I need to do? What is my friend doing? What has he done that has earned him this opportunity? And what is it that I need to do that I'm not doing for that same opportunity? You know, but now, I mean, you know, I think about that too. It's like, cool. I see things that I would like to do. What do I need to do to get there? But it leaves space to have joy and sheer excitement when my friends have good things happen to them. And it's like, there's so much good in celebrating other people's accomplishments and other people's successes, you know, as opposed to being like, well, you didn't even have to work for that. Just, you know, everything just lands in your lap. It's like, you don't see what somebody does 12 to 16 hours a day.
Yeah,
you know?
and it's a mindset thing. I mean, like, by us talking that way in a detract type of way, it implies like there isn't enough to go around versus like, like, oh, good for him. Like oh, okay, if he can do it, I can do it. You know, like I just got to figure out how. You know, like
so. You know, and that's a great way to put it. It's like, you know, when people compare themselves to other people, be it their peers, you know, whatever, be it other artists, it's like you're constantly, what you're doing, whether you're conscious of it or not, you're giving yourself the green light to feel pity for yourself and to feel sorry for yourself and to operate from scarcity, you know, and from this is what I don't have, as opposed to giving yourself an opportunity to be like, that's awesome for you. Man, I'm so excited about this opportunity for you. And to then simultaneously think, hey, I would love to, you know what? I never even thought I could do that. That would be really cool. Maybe I should start working to that. You know, like it's an interesting thing, but, there is this industry is very, you know, it can be very easy to fall into that competitive trap. Social media doesn't make it any easier, but you know.
It is. And I mean, I can only feel this way now just because a lot of the combination of failures and then the work I've done to myself versus like maybe other people who have had earlier success or are just deeper in there. They haven't even, you know, come up for air to done that work. So it's easy to get caught up in that stuff.
Yeah, that's such a good point. You really, you know, like everybody has to be willing to look internally to and assess like, well, wait, am I really pissed at this person? Does this person really not deserve this opportunity? Is this person really as bad or, you know, as I say that they are, or really as undeserving? Or is it just that I've got some things that I need to work out in myself? You know, it's like, it's a good point. But yeah, so DistroKid ended up being the best choice for me. I've been very happy with it so far. You know, and really, yeah, one of the next things I got to figure out is, starting a label for myself so that things don't just show up as like copyright, a bunch of arbitrary numbers, DK Records. Like,
Well, I mean, like all the real parts aside, like business names and all that. I mean, you can always just change the letters for now, like
yeah, true, true.
On the next release. But
very true.
I mean, for me, I always simplify it like for two, like, cause I could do like a whole podcast on this topic, but I always tell people like, cause there's a lot of bands out here I know, and they're not as prolific, so I'm almost like, look, I almost advise them for CD Baby, because unlike TuneCore, like they do a once-time fee and that's it, forever, and like whenever new stores or whatever happen, they just keep updating. Like I have a friend put out something in 2009 with them back. They might have still done actual CDs back then, but like, yeah, his stuff is on Spotify, and he's not even like about music like that anymore, but it just keeps on updating, and he just paid that one time, versus, but like when people I know are like prolific, I'm like, nah, you need to be on DistroKid. The most extreme example, and funny enough, this guy, he lived in Austin and he moved to LA now, so who knows? Maybe you'll you can run into him at some point, or not. But his name is Nether Friends. But yeah, I did a podcast with him, and this guy makes 3 albums a month, and that's his full-time living. Like, so,
good for him.
So he's definitely like, he's winning. He's winning the DistroKid war right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Another good one too, by the way, that really deserves a mention is Bandcamp. And,
oh, wow. That's right. I've gotten some of your stuff from there too. Yeah.
Yeah. Bandcamp is wonderful. It is a separate, it's a separate entity. So like I have to do my DistroKid stuff, which, pushes to Spotify and iTunes and everything like that. And then I have to do Bandcamp separately. But what I love, but what I love about Bandcamp is there's so much freedom that I, the artist, have. For instance, I can set, first of all, it's a free service. You can set your release dates. You can give out free download codes if you want to. You can sell merch from your site. And one of the things that I'm planning on doing is with the undo of Did You Know, I am going to make sheet music available for that. And I'm going to put that up through Bandcamp. And
I didn't even know you could do that on there.
Yeah, I didn't either. And I was just like, the thought had crossed my mind because someone had commented on my Instagram, like an Instagram photo, asking about, I think it was asking if there was sheet music available for it or something like that. And I was like, there isn't, but there can be, And so like I've been teaching myself Sibelius, just like make this happen.
I haven't heard that in years, that name.
And so, but I love Bandcamp because what it allows me to do is it allows me to, set a price, but then let people pay what they want, which has worked out really, really well for me. And, I won't say that I'm getting a ton of people paying for stuff through Bandcamp, but what I will say is the average that I'm getting from people is far more than the minimum. I'm getting, people, first of all, can be wonderful. Sometimes people can be absolute assholes, but sometimes people can be wonderful and so generous. And, it really allows me the capability to perhaps earn a little bit more money, which is nice. But also it allows me to keep the pricing fair. So like some people can't afford to throw $10 at an EP. And I don't think that they should be restricted, from having my music. Like, can you pay $1? Can you pay $2? Can you pay $3? That's perfectly fine. And I mean, sure, people, jack it on the internet, whatever. That's I can't stop that. But so Bandcamp and DistroKid are my things, and I've been very happy with both of them. And so I'm looking forward to putting some more, like sheet music and other stuff up on Bandcamp as well. And, so that's been my modes of distribution.
That's cool to hear, because I think you might be the first person I've known who's had maybe like a successful experience with that. Because I know people who have their stuff on there, but it doesn't really get any traction from there. And then from
Well,
people
it's
I
hard to
don't
get
know.
traction. That
Yeah.
I'm still figuring out how to do. But that's the other thing, by the way. Oh yeah, right. Duh. That's the other thing, by the way. So here's a mistake that I made with DistroKid, or at least with Spotify, right? So the Did You Know piano undo. The reason I put that out before I put the EP out was because I was like, okay, for one, this is finished. And if I put this out, that lights the fire under my butt
To keep
to
going.
really finish the EP and put it
Yeah.
out in a reasonable amount of time, But also, I have had one of my songs playlisted by Spotify before.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, it was so random. I still don't know how this happened.
You just answered my question.
Yeah, I have no idea.
Because
It
we
was
can
back
submit a
in-
song, so I was gonna ask you if you
Yes.
submitted it, but you said no, right?
Well, so this is the lesson that I had to learn. So my song, You Lied, from 2013 was playlisted, I want to say, I can't remember if it was summer of 2014 or summer of 2015. I don't remember, but it was one of those two. And I, to the point where, and I wouldn't have known were it not for the label head of Nueva Deep, or Proton, which is the parent company, emailed me to say, hey, Kerry, this is the highest royalty payment we've seen from any of our artists. Do you have any idea why? And I just had no clue what they were talking about. And then I saw a paycheck that paid for a month's expenses. And I just went, oh my, like I had no idea what was going on. Sure enough, my song had gotten playlisted. I had no idea. And so I had put out the Did You Know piano undo, thinking that like, oh, this would be perfect for, hopefully this would be perfect for like the chill piano playlist, or peaceful piano playlist was what I was kind of trying to go for. Welp, you can only submit a song for Spotify playlist consideration. You need to give them at least, and so
Wait, say that again.
You have to give
your
them.
voice
You have to
just
give
cut out.
Spotify 7 days.
Yeah, minimum
so-
7 days. Yeah.
Right. And when I put out the Did You Know piano undo, I was still on the basic DistroKid plan where, you submitted it, you uploaded it to DistroKid, and within 24 to 48 hours, it would be up on your, all your sites and everything. So I didn't know. I thought like, okay, it had to be on Spotify in order for me to submit it for a playlist consideration. Nope. Learned the hard way that it has to be pending. It has to be upcoming and not yet released. And so I was like busting my tail trying to get the release details for my EP in order. And that's why I upgraded at that point, because I scheduled my EP for release and then submitted a track for consideration, and it didn't happen. So, I don't know if they just didn't like it or didn't think it would fit any of the playlists, whatever, worth a shot. I'll certainly do that again. But now I know.
Yeah. It's always worth trying. Who really knows what it is? Like, but it's always
and you
worth
have
trying.
to have 7 days. So like what I'll do, I think I cut it really close. I think I gave them like 6.5 or 7 days exactly. So like next time I know, all right, put my stuff up on DistroKid and set a release date for like 2 weeks in advance. That way I have that buffer, but
yeah, I'm doing a few. My friend, funny enough, right? I don't know how active he's gonna be in music. He might even be done, but he made a lot of music under 2 aliases. And I told him how to do it. I've shown him DistroKid. I showed him other things. He won't do it. So I was like, you know what? Like, I've had the label plan for a while. It's like, look, man, if we do a split or something, like I'll do it for you, right? And you can be on my quote unquote label, you know, like,
Yeah.
because he's just not interested. And honestly, anybody who's gonna be on my label, I noticed those are the type of, you know, quote unquote musicians that are gonna be on my label. Because I'm not, you know, I don't got time to like blow it up anybody, but there are just people who might do music, but it might not be their number one thing in life, you know. So I'm like, all right, well, just come here and then I'll do it for you, you know.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's just mostly just friends. But anyway, I was gonna put his up, maybe even starting tonight with probably like a 4 week advance, and then like he has a lot of albums like that he did over the years. So I was like, dude, if you're
Mm.
not attached to the release date, let me just put them all like as they're new, and like I'll maybe like spread them out like a week apart, and then like just do that playlist submission every week, you know, just to see
Yeah.
what happens.
Yeah.
So
There's a lot, and this is something too that I'm trying to understand more. And this is a downside to self-releasing, like when I was releasing stuff on labels, they handled all
all the
this
fun
stuff,
stuff, yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And so like,
But now you got to
um,
promote. Now you got to collect. Can I ask you a
oh,
complicated question? Let me tell you something. We're probably not going to do the life questions, which is fine.
I want to get to them. I want to
We,
get,
we,
let's,
we,
let's
but
go rapid fire.
this is super important. It's super important though. I have to. Do you do any admin work, like for your stuff now, your own releases though?
I do everything myself.
I'm
I
sorry. When I
do.
say admin, I mean like so like publishing admin. Sorry, like like collecting the mechanicals like from AHFA, or do you use like another company like Song Trust or something like that, or not?
I am registered with BMI,
Okay.
and I'm also registered with Sound Exchange.
Ah, yeah,
Um,
I am
and
too, and
Sound
I haven't
Exchange is
signed
a
any
good
songs
one.
up. Yeah.
But here's the crappy thing. Sound Exchange is wonderful, um, but they have a form that you have to fill out. And I will tell you, so I have to, I do all this stuff myself, right?
Yeah.
And I'm also trying to update my all music catalog as well. And I updated my Discogs randomly the other day.
Oh wow.
But Sound Exchange, you have to fill out a form in order to, like, for all my self-release stuff. I've got to fill out a form so that they know to collect for that stuff. Um, and the form is kind of long, and maybe my brain just can't understand it very well, or maybe I just haven't sat down and really forced myself to focus. That's probably what it is. But yeah, I do all of that stuff myself. And so, it is what it is. But, I think about like, well, I could pay somebody to do all this stuff, but I know that I'd have to sit there and basically get all the information that somebody else would need to enter in. And so it just makes sense just to do it myself at this point. But yeah, so I go through Sound Exchange, I go through BMI, and all that. So, and DistroKid collects money through Spotify and stuff like that too. So,
Yeah, they do
you
the
know,
distributor. There's a bunch of other things that maybe I'm wrong about, but
mm,
I know like there's the whole like publishing side of like collecting on your stuff, like the mechanicals and stuff too.
right.
Yeah.
Which, is, that's where BMI comes in. But that would also require, my stuff to get placed in, say, like an ad or a trailer or something like
Yeah,
that, which,
the bigger things.
yeah, I'm not super aggressive with that.
For sure.
Not that I don't want to be, but it's been kind of one thing at a time so far. But yeah.
No, I got you. I'll hit you with the life questions and we can wrap it up.
All right,
Uh,
cool.
they're kind of deep though, I warn you. But what do you think that people think you're crazy for believing?
Oh man. I so I I am a little paranoid. And I think it's kind of funny because maybe I've just watched too many, like I've watched Black Mirror and Orphan Black, and like I've read 1984 and Brave New World, but I am a little paranoid. So things like 23andMe, Ancestry.com, those things scare the absolute crap out of
Why
me.
would
The whole
Ancestry? I think 23andMe is the same thing though, right? But why would those
Yeah,
sites scare you? They scare me for a
Because-
different reason, but
Well, okay, why do they scare you?
I heard that they can keep your DNA and make clones or some crazy shit.
Right? Like, I mean, so on the one hand, here's how stuff like this is good. First of all, if you are adopted, or if you are a foster child, or if you are orphaned and you don't necessarily know where your family roots come from, like, it can help you sort of piece all that together, which, might be kind of cool. It can also, your DNA can be used for medical research, to sort of help figure out, okay, this person has the BCRA1 gene, so here, so she, usually she, but could also be a he, is more likely to develop breast cancer. So how can we mutate that gene, or how can we sort of find a way to eradicate that gene to, somehow abolish breast cancer, right? Like, that could be very good. But I'm very much one of those people who's like, right, but you are willingly giving your DNA to companies that can sell your data to third parties and can store and utilize your DNA for whatever they see fit now and in perpetuity. So, it's like, oh, and by the way, here's another perk of stuff like that. One of the people that works at our school was saying that one of her classmates was murdered several years ago, and they were the killer went uncaught for a long time, and they finally just caught him somewhat recently because his twin brother did one of these Ancestry or 23andMe or something like that, and they were able to link his DNA to DNA at the crime scene and catch his. Yeah, so there are good things. There are definitely good things about these sites, but I am so paranoid that, like, yeah, I know that it's not actually gonna happen. Like, no one wants my DNA. First,
but you
of all.
never know until they do.
Right. So, like, I have very seemingly irrational paranoias. Like, the whole, like, Facebook privacy thing. Like, I'm super paranoid about, like, data privacy and stuff like that. So, like, and I don't think it's completely unfounded. Certainly, like the 10-year challenge, like, yeah, there is some validity to, hey, you are providing a younger face and an older face for potential research.
Damn, you see the other thing. Mining. I just don't do it because I think it's, not that I think it's dumb, but it's like, look, man, I ain't where I want to be. I ain't got time to find a picture of me from 10 years ago.
Like, it's like, I'm like, okay, great. You know what? To be honest, like, am I better looking now than I was 10 years ago? I don't know. Probably not. In some ways, maybe. My eyebrows look better, because I fill them in now. Like, fine, but, like, I don't know. I don't care.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I have a tendency toward paranoia. So there are some things that I know that I sort of, like, beliefs that I hold that I know some people think that I'm absolutely crazy for.
I did want to do stuff like that, but yeah, now because of, like, stuff that what you said, and, like, I'm afraid too. But I would be, for two reasons, curious. Like, one, just to see, I'm Puerto Rican, and I know we descend from Puerto Rico, but, like, where else? Like, what else? Does my family come from? But honestly, the most important thing now that I pay a lot of attention to food and, like, the fasting and, like, all these type of ideas, I was hearing this one doctor talk, and I think him and his wife, they both eat a different way, but he was like, he was one of these people on the carnivore diet, and basically he was like, by studying, where his people came from, like, it was in an area where vegetation wasn't really, like, a thing, because I think it was so cold, like, so it would only be there. And he was like, that's why meat works for me so much better, but when I add, like, salad or stuff, like, it kind of gets worse for me, just based on, like, where he came from ancestrally. And
that's
I was
really
like,
interesting.
I would love to know where we come from, just so I can maybe check out those foods that they ate and maybe, like, narrow it down to that scope, and maybe I'd be, like, tremendously healthy just because now I'm eating what I'm conditioned to eat, by programming. Right. So that's probably the number one reason I would like to, but I don't want people to make another me, so I don't know.
I'm really not trying to have, like, my personal information And I mean, like, I know that so much of my personal information
It's too
is
late.
already
We lost the
available,
war. We
right?
use a phone. We use this. I mean,
Yeah,
all these things. Who
exactly.
knows, man? I made you install Discord. I think probably like stole like half your like catalog
I
already. Like, yeah,
know. It's like it's basically like absorbing all of my innards at this point anyway, and it's just like
exactly.
it's going to put all my information on the black market.
Yeah.
You know,
I
fine,
mean, like,
whatever.
and I won't go down another big thing, but I remember when that whole Snowden thing and happened, everybody was
Yeah,
freaking out. I was like, um, maybe it's just me watching too much anime and crazy movies, but I was like, I mean, like, why is that surprising? Like, I
yeah,
guess it's one thing for them to do it and not tell you, but I was like, did you not think they weren't doing it? Like, this is the government, dog. Like, this is what they do.
yeah.
This is what they
Exactly,
do. So, I
exactly.
mean, to me,
It's
I think
like
freaking out was uncalled for. I was like, you should have just been like, this is Tuesday. This is this is what they do, you know?
yeah, it's that whole it is a very complex, it's a complex wormhole, and admittedly there's so much that I don't know, and how, but at the same time, you know it just kind of, the simplest answer is kind of what you just said. It's like, why would they not? Like, if you have the power to do something, why would you not? Like,
In the case of the government, it's just a lot of precedent. Like, I mean, like,
yeah,
and I'm not even saying nothing bad about the CIA, but the CIA is like always an amazing, like, I don't know if company is the word, but an organization
mm,
to just look at their stories of things that are public, not even things they're hiding, just of things that are public, you know? So, I mean, like, same thing, like, and then Facebook is the most famous example, but pretty much has been
yeah,
proven that anything can be datafied, and once you quantify it into a numerical value, like, you can do stuff with it. I mean, long story is short. So it's like, yes, that's what they're going to do it. And they're all offering their services for free, and this is the price you pay, Read that
yep,
TOS, even though I don't, but, that's the TOS.
yeah,
Like,
yeah. These terms of services will tell you, we are going to come for your firstborn,
yeah, yeah,
somewhere deep in the 25th clause, but who actually reads the whole thing? Just click OK and be done with it,
yeah.
right?
Because you don't have a choice to some degree. It's just.
Yeah. I'll give you a lighter one too, by the way,
Okay.
a not so hilariously, whatever. One thing from an audio perspective that people think I'm crazy for. I edit I edit mouth clicks and pops out of my vocals
Mm.
manually most of the time, although I do also use RX from Isotope.
I
And
use
I
that for
don't
podcast.
use, yeah, yeah, it's great for stuff like this. But I also don't use a gate, and I don't really use de-essers. I do any sort of like getting rid of room noise. I do that manually. And I get rid of mouth clicks mostly manually, and I quiet breaths and I quiet S's mostly manually. But people think I'm nuts for not using a gate and for going so ham on my cleanup aisle 5 of the audio. But I can contest that it's worth the extra effort,
It does
because
sound
what you
better.
get is a cleaner vocal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it does sound better. It's just way more tedious. I do breaths for songs. For
Yeah.
podcasts, I'm like, hell no. And I stopped even using like the RX breath thing because I think like I'm not gonna hear the whole thing with the plugin on. It's just too
Yeah.
long. And after doing it with the plugin, like I was probably using it incorrectly too. Just not as skilled as I guess I should have been. But it was just cutting too much of the voice out that I was like, well, these breaths ain't bothering nobody, dude. It's not
Yeah.
like, it's not that
Yeah.
big a deal. But like,
Exactly.
how do you get DSs like or I'm sorry, how do you DS manually? What, just like some EQ stuff or like?
So a lot of it is EQ, and what I find for myself is I only sing in front of a mic now, pretty much. Like at this point, I sing in front of a mic on pretty much a monthly basis when I'm doing recording and stuff like that, and I have trained myself to a certain degree to actually sing in a way where I don't mute my S's when I sing, but the way that I sort of place my teeth and my tongue and my lips and everything, I can kind of sort of manually and human slightly de-ess myself to a degree when I'm actually singing.
So it starts in the vocal process.
It starts in the actual vocal delivery, yeah. And then, what I found is, I have some sibilance for sure. And some of it is very, very harsh and painful. So what I do first is I just quiet my S's, my CH's, any like TS's, that sort of thing, any sort of sibilant consonants. And, I start by just a 3 dB, generally speaking, low, plus or minus reduction. And then, usually what I can do is, you can find that place of real harshness, the point where it starts to hurt. And you can make a little, very narrow dip in an EQ in order to kind of just tame that a bit without taking anything really, at least, from my perspective, at least, without taking anything out of the actual vocal itself. Because you're not making wide cuts and you're not making like really drastic cuts. You're just kind of doing a little bit of preventive maintenance. And then what I'll do is, I use a multi-band EQ on my a multi-band compressor on my vocal. And so you can do a little bit of quote unquote de-essing in that way. But I found that de-essers, if you don't really know what you're doing, or you just kind of rely on them very blindly to sort of treat all of your sibilants the same. First of all, not all sibilance is the same. And if you're not careful, your de-esser can give you a lisp because you can compress something so hard that you actually give yourself a lisp. And that's happened to me before. So
I feel like I may be guilty of that. Less maybe when I do it in my songs, but more when I do it on podcasts, because like these things are long and it's like I'm not going to go through all of it.
Yeah,
like,
no.
I'm sorry. But then I'll hear it's less the guest and more like me. I'm like, man, do I really sound like that? Or like, I don't know.
That's interesting. Huh.
And it just might be not me being used still getting used to how I sound,
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think it's a huge, just in the, bit of time that we've been talking, I haven't heard anything like outrageously sibilant. So,
wait till you hear it on playback. You're like, what the hell did this guy do? And like, not to you, it's only going to be to me. It's not-
No, it's such a, but it takes, it takes a lot of patience, and it takes a willingness to sit there and really learn and really make mistakes, to understand kind of like what the best process is, for you in whatever situation, but yeah, I show people my vocal editing process, because people always ask me, how do you process vocals? And they expect me to go to things like EQ and compression and stuff. And I don't even touch that with a 10-foot pole until I've talked about your singer needs to know the song. You need to get in front, you or your singer need to know the song. You need to get
sound
in front
like
of the
an
mic
OG now. All these things before you hit record. Yeah.
Right. All these things before you hit record. And then once you've got the recordings, you got to spend time comping and editing, which means you need to know what you're listening for and what you're trying to hear. Comp, edit, get rid of the, room noise and stuff. Then you tune, then you time correct. And after all of that's done, you should have a really good sounding raw vocal that doesn't need much, if any, actual processing, except for the fact that you need it to sit well in a track. But people look at me like I am effing nuts when I talk about all of that other stuff. It's like, well, can you just show me how to compress? It's like, but your vocal doesn't need to be compressed, and it's not really a good vocal.
Yeah, a lot of the times, like, it's just easy to get lost in the like, how do you make things sound good? And then we just see all these. This can be the negative of the YouTube videos. Like, well, you see them doing it, so you do it. And I still don't understand to this day, like, why do a lot of people have 400 plugins on one track? And I'm like,
oh, because Virtual Riot said to do it this way, so I got to do it this way.
Yeah,
it's like,
yeah.
oh.
I'm like, And yo, and then I'll try that. Well, not anymore, but I remember trying. I was like, yo, this makes no sense. I feel like I'm just doing shit to could do shit because they did
Yeah,
shit. So I don't
yeah,
know.
yeah,
But
exactly.
I'll hit you with the next one.
Yay.
If you were rich, how would you live your life?
I would like to think not much differently than I do right now, to be honest. I've prided myself on being pretty financially savvy. I don't come from a lot of money, but I certainly, my parents, uh, made sure that my sisters and I had everything that we needed and a lot of the stuff that we wanted. And for that, I'm very fortunate. But my parents also, from a young age, I worked, to earn an allowance. And my parents made me, I think appreciate the money that I had. I mean, I took out student loans and I had to pay them back. And, and I've had to really kind of figure out on my own how how do I spend my money? How do I earn my money? How do I spend it? So I'd like to think that if I were wealthier, I wouldn't really have a different way of living my life. I just think that I'd have more money to help other people out, which would be
Mm,
very, very nice. I would love to, I'd love to get, help other people financially. I'd love to be able to donate more money without feeling like, oh crap. It's either, give Planned Parenthood or give ACLU, $50 or
someone has to
pay
lose.
my
Yeah,
gas bill. Yeah,
yeah,
so it's
someone
like,
has to lose.
and you know what? I would have a little bit, like I might pimp out my studio a little bit more, you know. But like I'd like to think that I wouldn't really live too much differently if I had more money.
I feel
But
like. Oh, sorry.
I'm just gonna say, but that seems pretty idealist to me. So I don't know
Yeah, we
how
never know
practical
till
that
we
would
know.
be.
But I feel like the artist. I'd like to think, yeah, because I debate in this answer with a lot of my non-artist friends, but I'm like, dude, you don't understand. Like the bucket list is the artist. I mean, sorry,
Yeah,
the bucket list for the artist, the bucket list is the art, you know? So I would
yeah,
just do it all at scale. Like, if you were down for a podcast, I would just went to LA. I would just, I would, and then and it wouldn't even be like that big a deal because then I'd see like my LA friends, and then I'd probably get other people who I don't know yet, on there, so it
yeah,
would all work out.
yeah,
And I would just do other people. I got not even like a friend, but an online friend. I'm like, yo, I'm gonna get him on the podcast, and we'll use Discord. But I'm like, I would have just flew to Korea, and I'm like, and then we just figure it out. So it would just
yeah.
be like at scale, like at that. It would just be bigger, better. Um, and
Yeah,
I,
I think that's a great way to put it. I would definitely be traveling more. That is for certain.
yeah, oh,
Yes.
absolutely. I think everybody, that's like a default for everybody.
Yeah.
This was my original question when I started like looking for more in life. What's your goal in life?
Oh, my goal, I'd like to help play a part in leaving this planet a little bit better
Mm,
um, than right now. My goal is to connect with people. My goal is to learn and to never stop learning. My goal is to help people, and art, specifically music, is my vehicle. Music is my vehicle for becoming a better person and for understanding myself more. It's my vehicle for constantly learning. The great thing about what I do is I never have to stop. I will never hit a point where there is not going to be more education or more learning to be, which I think is one of the most wonderful things about being an artist, about being a musician, is I will always, until the day I die, have a means to continue to get better and to continue to learn and to continue to evolve and grow. And so, really, if I can help people, if I can connect with people, if I can, do that in a way that's healthy, where I feel fulfilled, and if I, can look in the mirror every night and say, you know what, you're okay, kid. That's the goal, Like my goal is just don't be an asshole, But yeah, I really think that um, there are, of course, like other things that I would like to do. I definitely want to travel more. And, I'd love to score a Netflix series. I'd
Oh, a
love to.
series. You're like, not even a film.
Yeah.
No, I want to
Oh, I would love to score a film. Oh, no. I would be happy with a film. I would be
like,
so happy with a film.
yo, I need
would be
13
happy
hours. I end at 2 hours. Like, no, I need 13 hours.
Clearly. No, I would love to get into scoring. I would love to, to do more writing and stuff like that. But those are sort of very minute, selfish goals. And I they're not really like, those are the things that I work toward. But the overarching goal is really to continue to grow and to continue to learn and to try and do whatever I can to help make society, help make this country, help make our planet better, in however I can, so it's a lofty goal. But I feel like I'm a cockroach. I'm not going to die anytime soon. So I think I've got some years to, continue to do this. So
there you go. I'm a cockroach. Yeah. There's the quote of this.
I'm a cockroach. I am not going to, like, seriously, there was a point in my life where I didn't think I was going to make it to 30. So that tells you, like,
I had that too. I had that feeling. Just because combination is so young, and then where you're growing up and stuff, and just yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
3 things you're thankful for in life.
Oh man, just 3. I will spare you the whole, like, my family, my friends, all that stuff, because those are givens, and I feel like those are safe.
I hear those a lot. But I never told them no. I mean, but hey, so if you want to use that, there's nothing wrong with that.
I think they're worth mentioning. And I think that, certainly not everyone is so lucky to feel grateful for their family and their friends and all that and their health. So I don't want to insult anybody who, like, that's what you have to be grateful for the day, because sometimes that really is all you have.
Yeah.
But the fact that all day yesterday, and most of the day today, I get to sit and I get to play and I get to experiment and I get to learn. I think that you probably notice that there is a recurring theme across a lot of my answers that dwells heavily in learning. So I'm very grateful for my ability and my desire to learn, in as many different avenues as I can. Like, I like to learn from other people. I like to learn from things that I do. I like to learn from reading and from listening to things, so I'm really grateful for my ability to learn. I am really grateful that I get to do what I love every single day. And, I know that that's not something that everybody gets to say. And even though I'm not necessarily right where I want to be, even though, the financial struggle can certainly be real and the personal struggle can sometimes be real, I get to do what I love every day. So I'm very grateful for that. And I am grateful that, now I want to lean on my family and my friends.
Nothing wrong with that. It's not wrong with that.
I guess, here I am circling that back around, but I'm grateful for the fact that, I have good people around me. I have people around me who support what I do, who love me even when I don't really always love myself, and, who want the best for me. And, I don't take that for granted because, I don't know if I'd like to think I have the work ethic and the intestinal fortitude, as my dad likes to say, to be where I'm at solely on my own. But at the same point in time, I don't know that I really would be if I didn't feel like there were people who care about me, who really do want to see me thrive and succeed. So yeah, I guess I'm going to lean on, family, friends, and the people that I have, around that, are just genuinely good people, and they challenge me and they help me grow and they love me, even though sometimes I'm not so lovable. So yeah.
Th-
You
those
know.
uh those first two hit home because I feel like it's only now that uh I'm starting to cultivate learning in myself,
Yeah.
like because I'm not anti-learning or nothing, but a lot of times, especially when we first started, like I just want to make a song, and
Yeah.
I can be kind of closed-minded to learning like more stuff about how to do these things because I was like, I just want to make a song, like
Yeah.
and then the second part, oh man, what was the second one again? I'm sorry, I like feel like my mind.
Uh, crap. Oh, that I get to do what
Oh
I love
yeah,
every
no,
day.
I'm
I've
definitely
already forgotten.
yeah, no, I'm definitely trying to make that a priority like in my life because I feel like again, like it's for so few. Not even talking about the world, but just like in my circle, like I feel like man, none of us have been able to do this. Like what, and like
Yeah.
beyond my music friends, just a lot of us. And I'm like, I don't know what it is or what I have to do, but I'm like, I gotta figure this out because like this is super important to like the rest of my mental state in life.
Yeah, it is. And I think when you think about like, you know, one of the things that I think was the hardest lesson for me to learn is, you know, I've always been somebody that like, I have a tendency to put other people before myself.
Mm.
And I don't say that to be like, oh, look how good of a person I am. I say that because it actually almost killed me at one point in my life because I used putting other people, like if somebody needed something, I would, do it or whatever. Um, I put that before my own health. And I kind of had a very negative view of like self care, for instance,
Mm.
and so one of the things that really I had to learn is I have to take care of myself and I have to make sure that I'm good if I want to continue being good to other people. I
Mm.
can't operate at full efficiency. I can't operate at full capacity if I'm forcing myself to run on empty. And I always used to think like, well, the way to operate, like the way to have fulfillment is to just be selfless, and to like put everybody else first and make sure everybody else is okay. But, it's a bit of a trickery there. And so, yeah, but I also looked at like, this kind of goes back to the whole comparison thing. I looked at a lot of people would look at what I'm doing and say, well, you're not a successful musician because you have a job as a teacher. And you're not doing this on your own because you have a steady source of income. And it's like, well, yeah, I have a steady source of income. And I do have a job as a music teacher. And that actually, for me, contributes to me being able to say that everything that brings me money is directly related to my field of study in college and my purpose in life. And so, and even if I had a job that wasn't music related, sure, I might feel down on myself for that. Or I might say, hey, this is something that I enjoy doing that I can use as a vehicle to get to where I want to continue to get to. So it is difficult. I think our generation has it rough in that cost of living is very expensive. And, many of us are saddled with student debt. So that makes, trying to branch out and start a life for yourself very difficult. And it's also just, it can be very, very difficult to really figure out where you fit in society and fit in the world when you're constantly blasted with like Instagram and Facebook telling you what you should believe and what you shouldn't think and what you should be doing. And you should eat this, don't eat this, this is the way to be healthy, that sort of thing. It's like, you have to turn off all that noise and just, kind of look in the mirror and say like, am I good with what I have? That sort of thing. I think anyway.
No, that's the good and positive right there of like the social media. I feel bad because I make like a lot of nonsense too myself, a lot of clips and stuff, so I contribute to that noise. But
Oh, I do too.
at the same time though, like I kind of almost like ignore like the timelines now because
Yeah.
it's just too hard. Like so I'll post stuff, but then like I'll try to try to see as little as possible just so I can keep moving in my day,
Yeah. Yeah. That's a healthy approach, I think.
It had to be done because I was just wasting too much time on there. But where do you see yourself 3 years in the future?
Shit, I have no idea.
Then you was real quick. That was your quickest answer. You're like, I honestly,
I have no clue. And I'm not afraid to say that, because if you asked me 10 years ago, or if you had told me 10 years ago that I was going to move to LA and that I was going to be living here and that I was going to be an artist and teach music production, I would have laughed in your face and called you a moron. So I have absolutely no idea where I'm going to be in 3 years. I imagine that I will probably still be living here in LA. I'm hoping that I'm still happily married. That would be nice. I'm assuming that will be the case. And I certainly, hope that I am releasing music much more regularly and consistently.
Take advantage of that distro kid.
Yeah. But I have no idea, because I feel like the trajectory of my life has been so. I look back and I look at some of the things that I've done, and I'm like, how did that ever present itself as an opportunity? So I don't know. I'm cool with that. I'm excited.
All right.
Hopefully the earth hasn't blown up by that point,
Oh man, is that something I need to be aware of? Or is that like a thing?
Like we're destroying the planet, one minute at a time. So hopefully the earth doesn't just implode on itself.
No, we still got so I'm holding out till the singularity, whatever year that is. So I think we'll last more than 3 years. Oh, Ray Kurzweil and the singularity. You never heard of any of it?
Oh,
yeah.
I gotta go back and research.
I won't even touch that because. But what is the perfect day?
Oh, any day where I feel like I've had a good day in the studio, where I've been productive, where I have learned something, where I have perhaps helped somebody, or given something to somebody else. If there's whiskey involved, I'm not mad about that. The other things that might be involved, wouldn't be mad about that. But, I don't, I think it doesn't really take much, and yet it takes a lot to have that perfect day. But I would say, let me hole up in the studio, making stuff, or learning things, or helping people with things, or teaching people things, and I'm good.
All right. Here is the last one. What's the question I should have asked you but didn't?
Oh, wow. Jeez. I don't think that there is a question. I feel like if there were any questions that you didn't ask, I feel like I have answered them tenfold.
Well, here.
By the way, I am so sorry. Like,
no, I like this.
This is a great discussion. I've had so much fun, but I feel horrible that, like, I've taken so much of your time.
I usually feel that way towards the guests. So like that's why I was like, man, like they might be angry. Normally.
No.
Like, I am grateful that you're doing this, because I enjoy these things. Otherwise I wouldn't be in the 70s or whatever number I'm in. But
this is I appreciate the fact that you reached out multiple times, and I think like the I had to feel like I had something to actually talk about. And I think like that's been a big thing, is like, I can sit here now and I can tell you about the writing process of my EP, or I can tell you about the, production process, or like some things that I've learned, personally and stuff like that, that like 3 years ago, I didn't feel like I really had that sort of like, I feel like I was kind of just like, oh, I'm still like climbing to the top, that sort of thing. But no, I actually, I don't think
I've been there. I know that.
yeah. And it's funny because I have by the way, I know that I will have another point like that in my life multiple times. Like,
Exactly, yeah.
I've made it to the top of one peak, but I feel like there's still, several mountains in the range that I must scale.
Mm.
But
That's the artist. See, that's the artist. The artist is always like the mountain never ends.
yeah, exactly.
Mount Everest
It's like,
literally goes on forever.
yeah, seemingly, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't actually. I'm trying to think of like anything like cute and clever, and I can't because your questions were like really good, and I feel like, they're like
Let me ask
much like
this.
of a talking point.
Let me ask
Yeah,
this.
yeah.
Then what do you wish people would ask you but don't?
Um,
Like just in general, like people don't ask you but you kind of wish they would ask you or bring up or whatever so that you can talk.
that's a good question. Um, I I guess um one question that I would love for people to stop asking is like, when is this coming out? Release date? What label is this coming out on? Like, as soon as I post like a preview of something, because like, first of all, dude, I just whipped this up like
I just
in
say
two
looking
hours.
forward to it. That's all I say, by the
Yeah,
way.
and that's a perfect response because it's just like, okay, cool, you know. But like, um, I'm trying to think. I do, and this is kind of like something that from my past, like I've done interviews in the past where there's another question, and I'm very grateful that this didn't come up. But there's another question that I tended to get asked a lot, and that is, what's it like to be a female in the music industry? Have you ever faced sexism? Here's the question that why that question isn't good, and why I don't like being asked questions like that. Well, first of all, I've only ever been female. So I don't know what it's
You don't
like
have
not to be a
contrast, yeah.
female in the music industry. And second of all, I think at this point in our societal progress, if you will, I think it should be safe to assume that a woman in a male-dominated industry has very likely experienced some sort of sexism, myself included in that. But so the questions that I used to get asked were always, things about like what it's like to be a female. How do I balance my time and stuff like that, where I wished that I had gotten more questions focused on production, like how do you produce your vocals, or what are some approaches you take to constructing your tracks and stuff like that. Like what comes first? Do you, sit down at the piano and write? Do you produce a beat? Like that, those types of questions that I know my male counterparts always get asked.
I wanted to ask you some of that, but as we kept like right away, we just started talking. So like I like doing that stuff kind of maybe sometimes even more like than the production talk. So it's just like I didn't mind it. Like, so.
Yeah, no, and me either. And I think like one of the things is like, first of all, we can always come back and have another chat.
Yeah,
on, like,
I'm down.
Like
we can give it a few
batter's
months,
box.
and I'm always down. So like,
yeah, like I love like Pensado's Place, where they do like the batter's box type of questions that are like okay, compressor, and it's like really quickly like 1176. Or,
that was one of the first
737.
ones like I used to listen to Pensado's Place back in the day.
I love Pensado's Place.
Yeah.
I love Pensado's Place.
He's another one though. He's another one.
Yeah.
4,000 plugins on one track, man. I'm like, dude.
Sometimes yes, but he puts them all on for a reason most of the time, right?
He can't explain it. He can't explain he can't explain it. He will tell you. I usually can't tell. Maybe my ears aren't that good. I made the audio file in me is weak. Cause look, let me tell you, like I was watching the other day some of the. This is not speaking bad about him because I'm sure he's great too. But I was watching Armin's masterclass and that recently came out, and man, like also another one, 500 plugins on one track, and he can explain some of them, but sometimes he's like, I don't even know why this is here. Like, I don't even know what we were thinking, but
Yeah.
and it just looked like they're having like, but I think it was important for me to see that because a lot of times, like, at least for me, like, I'm getting out of this habit, but putting people on pedestals, and
Right.
I was telling my friend watching this stuff, like, who also makes music, I was like, yo, like, what these guys are doing, like, Armin, at least, like, watching that, like, that masterclass, they're just messing around like we are, but they're just like, to me, this is me being nice, like advanced and almost like they've been doing it for so long because they started like with the actual hardware years and stuff. Like they're probably not that they're actually bored, but they're so bored like they almost have to. They almost have to do it. And just from watching how they think and stuff, I was like, yo, they have to because they've been doing it for so long. And he was saying the same thing. Like he makes something every day, whether it's a finished track or whether it's like a one thing. So it's like, dude, you do it that long, like you're almost gonna end up tinkering because that's how you push the level. So does it need 500? No, but to keep him interested, it probably does. And same thing with Pensado.
Really lose track of your workflow too. Like, and I will admit, I look at some of my older sessions and go, what? Is this on this track?
Yeah.
And so like sometimes it really is just a workflow thing, and you lose track of the workflow, and you forget like, oh, I want to make this cut, so let me throw on an EQ, and you forget that you already had an EQ on your track, stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, like, it's always, we can always, come back for a production specific or whatever. But, it's also too like, I always like the conversations like this, that like, how many different topics did we cover over the past 3 hours?
And because like you started off right away, like I didn't even get to ask my initial question. Like suddenly,
what was that? What was the initial question?
I would have literally. So like there was no intro. We just started talking. So normally like
it was the ringtone on Discord.
Yeah, that was it. That's the intro, which I didn't even get to hear. Funny enough, but normally it would be like, all right, like I would say like, hey, this podcast is starting, blah blah. And then I'd be like, who am I here with? You would have said your name. And then I say, who is this? Yeah. And then you go on like describing yourself. But we just started talking and I was like, all right, bet. Let's just keep going. So yeah, like whoever heard this doesn't even know who you are still. I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that. I don't know, that might be an issue for you. But like a lot of my favorite like podcasts, because I hear a wide variety of stuff, but like the professional ones, sure, they want to do that. But like, a more famous professional one is also like Joe Rogan. And he just starts too, and they just go mid-conversation. If you don't know who this is, just Google it.
It's always like, the name is always in the track title.
Yeah. So your name's like, there. I'll have like a sentence or two, like you make music and stuff. So I'm like,
yeah, that's perfect. I make music and stuff. It's like, my name is Kerry Leva and I make music and stuff.
I learned that today too, by the way, that Leva, because in my head, man, I'm sorry, it was always like Kerry Leva. I'm sorry.
Well, actually, no, you are right. And so this is actually something that's really funny. Funny to me only because I've had to endure this for several years. So my last name was supposedly shortened from D Leva. So D-I, lowercase d-I, space L-E-V-A. And it was Leva, right? Because it's Italian. And Italian doesn't have the E isn't E in Italian, it's A, right? So it's Di Leva. And yet when my grandfather's family came over here on the boat, they, I think, as I understand from family history, and as was the case with a lot of Italian immigrants and German immigrants and French immigrants and Irish immigrants, any immigrants, if your name just seemed excessively ethnic to them, they would shorten it. And so they hacked off DI and just shortened it to LEVA. And they said, okay, you are Leva. And so it technically actually, Leva is correct.
I'm in touch with the roots. Let's go.
Yeah.
Let's go.
It's just, I get like Kerry Leva, and I'm like, no, it's not Leva, it's Leva or Leva. But yeah, so like that's supposedly, at least as far, and I have, some people on my dad's side of the family that are very into like the roots and the family tree and stuff like that. So, but like, yeah, if your last name is Sullivan, for instance, there's a good chance that if your ancestors came from Ireland, it was actually O'Sullivan or Mick Sullivan. It could still have been Sullivan, but yeah, a lot of times like the good folks at Ellis Island decided, we don't want this name. It's too ethnic sounding. It's too Irish sounding. It's too Italian sounding. We're just going to shorten it. Here you go. Here's your new name. It was also an electable thing too. But I am pretty certain that my family did not elect to have their name shortened, but I could be wrong. But yeah, Leva is technically historically correct, but we always just said Leva. So
there you go. We did get an origin story. There you go.
Yeah, so I the whole name thing is kind of funny, but yeah, no, so that's that's where it is.
Let me ask, where can they find you online?
Ooh, well, if people are not sick of me yet, they can find me by a simple Google search of Kerry Leva. But I'm on Spotify, I'm on Instagram, I'm on SoundCloud, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Twitter, probably somewhere on the black market as Kerry Leva.
Probably with that DNA, right? Probably with that DNA.
Yeah, probably that DNA. Yeah, my username is Kerry Leva on, I think, every platform. So
consistency.
Yes, consistency, just making it easy to find. So Bandcamp is also Kerry Leva. I think I'm most active on Instagram, believe it or not, even though I don't really post too many photos. I like the stories function every once in a while. It's kind of a good sort of like insider, here's what I'm working on today.
Yeah, I feel like every now and then you'll pop up on the story and I'll check it out.
Yeah. It's like, here's what I'm doing today. I'm making weird sounds. I'm making a beat. But yeah, no, so I'm active on everything else too. I just, maybe not as much so, but yeah.
And then last words.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for taking your day to do this. Thank you to your sister also. Happy birthday, Suzanne. Thank you for
I heard them screaming real loud while they were cooking, so I don't know what's going on. I don't know, so I'm gonna find out.
Well, thank you to your family for lending you for these past few hours. I've really enjoyed this conversation, and I really appreciate just having the conversation and talking to you and just going through the rigmarole. And after that, thank you to your listeners. I really appreciate you guys listening to this, and hopefully you guys have gotten something useful or insightful or funny. And last thing, be kind to one another. That's it.
There you go. Thank you again for doing it. I appreciate that.
Of course.
And everything.
Of course.
All right. Bake that chicken, smoke that turkey. Boosh.
All right.